Chapter 40-48. Pfft. Hearing this, Xiao Hua almost burst out laughing. He had been guessing the name of the Dragon Island's Great Elder, but he never thought that the name of the Dragon Palace's 9th Elder was actually from the heavenly stems and earthly branches. Dragon Vein. Xiao Hua's body coiled in the air. Although he didn't pose, the dragon cleansing pool formed his body. His body was completely formed from the spiritual energy of the stacked Jade Legacy realm. The majesty didn't allow him to be careless. Dragon Vein. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and said, "Fellow immortals, I haven't completely condensed my body yet. I can't be considered a saint dragon. You don't have to be so polite. I's body condensation is now my top priority. I won't waste any more time here. If you have anything to say, you can tell Taoist Master Xiao." "Yes." Although Dragon Bloodline Xiao Hua said so, Ao Jia and the other elders did not dare to be negligent and agreed respectfully. However, before Ao Jia could finish speaking, second elder Aoi hurriedly said, "Xinglong, I don't know how many years it has been since a 5-clawed true dragon appeared on Dragon Island. The position of Dragon Palace's 10th elder has always been empty. I implore Xinglong to stay on Dragon Island and inherit the name of Ao Gui and take charge of our Dragon Island's whole clan." "No need." Dragon Vein. Xiao Hua's body swayed. As he landed on Xiao Hua's body, he replied, "I haven't completely condensed my body yet. Let's not talk about this matter." As Dragon Vein. Xiao Hua entered Xiao Hua's body, the phenomenon of the entire Dragon Palace slowly disappeared. The 9 elders could no longer sit on the stone pillars peacefully. They heard Ao Xing talk about the stacked Jade Legacy realm's abnormality. They also heard Xiao Hua say it again. It wasn't that there weren't any dragons who condensed their bodies in the stacked Jade Legacy realm. However, none of the dragons had ever seen Dragon Vein. Xiao Hua condensing his body, let alone the appearance of the legendary 5-clawed Saint Dragon. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, it was completely the aura of the upper realm's dragon domain. That kind of incomparably holy dragon aura made them completely believe that Dragon Vein. Xiao Hua was a genuine 5-clawed Saint Dragon. Ao Jia stood in the air with a complicated expression on his face. He looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Taoist Master Xiao, can you explain the origin of the Saint Dragon to us? After all, Dragon Island has reconstructed their bodies in the dragon cleansing pool, but we've never reconstructed a holy dragon." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and replied very seriously, "First Elder, everything this Xiao said earlier is true. He didn't hide anything. Besides, do you think there's a need for me to hide it? Taoist Master Xiao, there's no need to say any more." Second Elder Aoi smiled and said, "All of this was arranged by the dragon ancestor. The appearance of the legendary Gui race on Dragon Island is a sign of the prosperity of the dragon race. The position of the 10th elder of the Dragon Palace belongs to Xinglong. Xinglong is a 5-clawed true dragon. How can he be lower than the 10th elder?" The 4th elder hurriedly said, "Even we can't stand shoulder to shoulder with Xinglong, right?" When Xiao Hua saw that the Dragon Palace was about to have an internal strife, he hastily waved his hand and said, "Junior is a Dao sect cultivator. That fellow Immortal also said clearly that he is also a Dao sect cultivator. He won't get involved in the internal affairs of the Dragon Island. I ask for the elders' understanding." First Elder Ao Jia heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. "If Spiritual Master Xiao says so, then I won't force you, that won't do." Second Elder Aoi shook his head and said, "If Xinglong is not a member of the Dragon Island, how can Longyu be given to him to comprehend? But Longyu was found by Spiritual Master Xiao." 4th Elder Ao Ding was unhappy. 9th Elder Ao Rin tried to smooth things over. "Why don't we let Spiritual Master Xiao have a name on the Dragon Island? Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds?" Second Elder Aoi rolled his eyes and smiled. He said, "Although Xinglong has not completely condensed his body and can't live up to the name of Ao Gui, why don't Spiritual Master Xiao temporarily take over the position of the 10th elder?" When Xiao Hua heard that, how could he not know that Aoi was using him to compete with Ao Zhan? He hastily waved his hand. "I'm just a human cultivator. How can I be an elder of the Dragon Palace?" Second elder, you're flattering me. First elder Aojia's head turned quickly and he winked at the fourth elder. Fourth elder Aoding's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, Spiritual Master Xiao, if you don't want to do anything practical, it's necessary to take on an empty position. Since Spiritual Master Xiao has given the five-clawed true dragon a new lease of life, then you're half a teacher to the dragon clan. Why don't we invite Spiritual Master Xiao to be the dragon master of the dragon clan? Dragon master? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned and didn't understand. However, he immediately declined and waved his hand. He said, There's a saying in the human race, a teacher is a father, imparting knowledge and dispelling doubts. How can this junior be the dragon master? Fourth elder, you must be joking. No way, absolutely not. First elder Aojian nodded. Let's do it this way. Spiritual Master Xiao, don't decline. Dragon Master is just an empty title. Moreover, this title is for Xinglong. You're more than qualified to be the Dragon Master of Xinglong previously. I was still having a headache about how to thank Spiritual Master for taking care of the Dragon Clan. With the title of Dragon Master, firstly it's to express the goodwill of the Dragon Clan. Secondly, it's to convey the respect of the Dragon Island to the three continents. Fourth elder said with a smile at the side, With the title of Dragon Master, if the Immortal Palace wants to touch Spiritual Master, they must also be wary of the title of Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, right? Hearing this, Xiao Hua muttered to himself. Although he didn't come to the Dragon Island to seek protection from the Dragon Island, he couldn't refuse the kindness of the Dragon Island. With the title of Dragon Master, not only would the Immortal Palace be wary, even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas wouldn't dare to touch him, right? If he wanted Xian Cheng's body, wouldn't the Dragon Palace of the West Sea obediently deliver it to him? All right. Xiao Hua nodded and bowed. Junior thanks all the seniors for taking care of me. Haha, you're welcome. The happiest one was naturally the second elder Aoe. He said, Since Spiritual Master Xiao has become the Dragon Master of the Dragon Clan, we'll be a clan in the future. There's no need to hide some of the secrets of the Dragon Clan from Spiritual Master Xiao. Junior's knowledge is limited. I don't dare to comment on the affairs of the Dragon Clan. Xiao Hua hurriedly declined. He looked at the silent Ao Xing at the side and said, Furthermore, Junior and Ao Xing were training in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm this time. I saw that many of the elites of the Dragon Clan had died. I'm afraid it's somewhat unfavorable for the Dragon Clan. I just don't know if the things we found are useful to the Dragon Clan. We haven't found any useful clues yet. The Great Elder was afraid that the Second Elder would say something else. He hurriedly sighed and said, However, since it was left behind in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm, there must be a reason. Let us slowly comprehend it. I hope that thing can help the Dragon Clan. Xiao Hua thought for a moment. He had a lot of questions to ask the Great Elder. For example, what was the golden core in the deep Erebus, and what was the crystal dragon? However, he didn't know what the Great Elder's arrangement was. He didn't want the Dragon Clan to know that he had obtained the golden core. He also didn't want to get involved in the internal affairs of the Dragon Clan. Therefore, he could only hide all his questions in his stomach. Oh, Great Elder, may I ask, other than the Dragon Clan members who came to the Dragon Island to gain experience in the Stacking Emerald Legacy realm, have the other human descendants who came to the Dragon Island to gain experience left the Dragon Island? Xiao Hua was thinking about how to bid farewell in his heart, so he changed the topic and asked. The Great Elder said with a smile, The training in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm is the longest. The training in the other forbidden areas has already ended. Those human descendants and demon descendants have already left the Dragon Island on the dragons. Very good, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Then Junior will also prepare to leave. That's right, Dragon Master Xiao. The fourth elder suddenly spoke. The human cultivator who came to the Dragon Island with you, Ao Zhantian, didn't come out from the smoke tree training area. However, I did ask one of the descendants of the monster race who went in with him. According to him, he was searching for a Tao Gate spiritual treasure in one of the forbidden grounds of the smoke tree. When the descendant came out, he received a distress signal from Ao Zhangtian. However, according to the message, that demon descendant didn't find any trace of Ao Zhangtian. Ah? Xiao Hua was stunned and hurriedly asked. Then, has the smoke tree been closed? He. The fourth elder said with a smile. Our dragon island usually opens the clear snow, Baotu, autumn wave, evening glow, spring cuteness, smoke tree, and dawn moon. These 7 places are different from the stacked jade legacy realm, they are not closed. However, when the time is up, the descendants will be forced to leave. Ao Zhangtian hasn't left yet. He might have died or been trapped in the forbidden area. If you want to find him, you can go and take a look. Thank you, fourth elder. Xiao Hua bowed and thanked. May I know if Ao Zhangtian left a message talisman? The message talisman has already been abandoned by that demon. The fourth elder replied. However, this old man did ask for the name of the forbidden area. If you want to go, you can ask Ao Sheng to bring you there. Alright, then I'll have to trouble you. Xiao Hua raised his hand and said, If it's possible, this junior wants to go now. Ao Sheng. Great Elder Ao Jian nodded and ordered. Follow this Xiao Hua to the smoke tree. Yes, this boy obeys. Ao Sheng, who was in the Dragon Palace, was abnormally obedient. After Xiao Hua left the Dragon Palace with Ao Sheng, the fourth elder pondered for a moment and said, Great Elder, Xiao Hua's matter will be settled as such for now. His strength is still shallow and his 5-clawed true dragon body has yet to fully materialize. Our dragon island has already done what we should do. The only thing left is to wait for him to grow. At this time, I think we should discuss the Gui tribe's matter. Great Elder, the Gui tribe has been rebelling for a long time and has caused great harm to our dragon island. Our dragon palace has been more lenient in the past. During this time's training, the Gui tribe didn't forget to cause trouble. If we suddenly pardon their crimes now, I'm afraid it's not very appropriate. Second Elder Aoi had a different opinion. The Great Elder waved his hand and said, It's very difficult for our dragon island's descendants to reproduce. For so many years, it's abnormally withered. The human race is 100 or 1,000 times worse than the dragon island. But look at the 3 continents, the hidden immortal continent, and the Elysium world are monopolized by the human race. They have almost become the masters of this world. Our 3 rivers and 4 seas are vaster than the 3 continents. But what about the descendants of the dragon island? Didn't Xiao Longsure say it earlier? Harmony is the most precious. He, a bystander, can understand it. Why can't we? In the past, because the dragon jade and the crystal dragon scripture were stolen and lost by the Gui tribe, our 8 races have a grudge against the Gui tribe. Now that the dragon jade and the crystal dragon scripture have returned, isn't it a good opportunity and a good start? -13. Chapter 40-49. It's not that I don't think the Ji tribe can't return. Second Elder Aoi said with a smile. I just think that without an elder to lead the Ji tribe for so many years, every branch is in a mess. It's not easy to control them. The strength of the 9 elders of the Dragon Hall was rare in the world, but the rhythm of the Dragon Hall's discussion was the same as the rhythm of the mortal world. There was no lack of delay and struggle. Naturally, Xiao Hua was not interested in this. He followed Ao Sheng out of the Dragon Hall and went straight to the smoke tree. Seeing that Ao Sheng was very familiar with bringing him to the depths of the Dragon Island, Xiao Hua frowned and suddenly asked, Ao Sheng, is this smoke tree where you usually play? Of course not. Ao Sheng replied without turning his head. Who would play in this place? Then how do you know which forbidden area Ao Zhangtian is trapped in? Hey! Ao Sheng understood what Xiao Hua meant. He turned his head and threw a, You know what I mean. Look! He smiled and said, You are now the Dragon Master. You have unlimited potential in the future. Shouldn't I be closer to you? That's not important, right? Xiao Hua sneered. You dragons, TSK, you're even more cunning than a 1,000-year-old fox. What's a 1,000-year-old fox? Ao Sheng covered his mouth and laughed. The Great Elder and the others are all tens of thousands of years old. You can't beat them. Just don't ruin the Great Elder's plans. Of course I won't ruin anyone's plans. Xiaohua shrugged. In fact, I don't want to ruin anyone's plans. I just want to leave the Dragon Island peacefully. Xiaohua glanced at Aoxing. Don't tell me Ao Zhantian's matter was arranged by the Fourth Elder? The Fourth Elder wouldn't do such a thing. There's no need for that. Aoxing smiled. He's in charge of the training. Any changes in the training have to be reported to him. If it was in the past, he wouldn't care about Ao Zhantian's matter. But since it's related to you, he'll naturally pay more attention. AI, why is this Ao Zhantian so unlucky? Xiaohua sighed. He already caused so much trouble when he came to the Dragon Island, and now he's in trouble. If I didn't want to find an excuse to leave the Dragon Palace, I wouldn't have gone to look for him. Exactly, Aoxing added. It's just a smoke tree, and he got trapped inside. What bad luck! Teacher Xiao, if you don't want to go, shall we turn back now? Xiaohua said confidently. How can that be? A gentleman's word cannot be taken back. Since this Xiao has said so, then I will definitely go and find him. As you wish. Aoxing shrugged. This smoke tree can't be compared to the Stacked Jade Legacy Realm. Since you're so powerful in the Stacked Jade Legacy Realm, this smoke tree is nothing. You'll definitely succeed. Then, Aoxing shamelessly asked Xiaohua about the deeper yuan. Of course, Xiaohua would not hide from Aoxing, and told him everything he saw. Aoxing's eyes lit up as he listened to Zhong Yu's explanation, and he said, Damn it, I didn't expect the deeper yuan to be the fault that leads to the Dragon Realm. If it's possible, then I can directly enter the Dragon Field from there. Why do you have to go through so much hardship to train on Dragon Island? Forget it. Xiaohua's face was full of disdain. If you don't train and enter the Dragon Field, you'll be eaten by the little dragon priest before you even show up. AI, that's true. Aoxing hung his head dejectedly. Long Sea is just a low-level demon beast in the Dragon Field. It's already so powerful in the Stacked Jade Legacy Realm. How many demon beasts in the Dragon Field can eat me? But then, Aoxing rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, Taoist, that crystal dragon seems to have taken a lot of time. Did you find anything from it? No. Xiaohua shook his head decisively. I didn't plan to look at it at all. Actually, that crystal dragon was deliberately released from the deeper yuan by me. TCH. Aoxing was disdainful. Taoist, you're just trying to trick me. In order to capture that crystal dragon, Ao Zhan and I racked our brains. In the end, Ao Zhan still used the secret technique of the Gui clan to get the crystal dragon. Taoist, I'm afraid it's not possible for you to get it right? Then what's inside the crystal dragon? Xiaohua took the opportunity to ask. How would I know? Aoxing shrugged his shoulders. But according to Great Elder's deduction, it might be something left behind by the Holy Dragon of the Dragon Field or a message from the Dragon Field. Now that Taoist wants to know the specific situation of the deeper yuan, I'm afraid it's mostly from the Dragon Field. So the crystal dragon was taken away by Ao Zhan just like that? Xiaohua looked around and asked. Aoxing nodded. Of course. The more bargaining chips Ao Zhan has, the more advantageous it is for Great Elder. Oh right, Taoist, the dragon cleansing liquid in the dragon cleansing pool, did you get it? That thing is useful for Great Elder. This? Xiaohua hesitated. After all, as long as he takes out a drop, the Dragon Island will know that he has the dragon cleansing liquid. Who knows how much trouble there will be in the future? However, Xiaohua thought for a bit and nodded. I got 3 drops. That's great. Aoxing's face showed extreme excitement. He shouted, Great Elder's injury can be cured. Xiaohua looked at Aoxing strangely and asked, What are you so happy about? That thing belongs to me. What does it have to do with Great Elder? Doesn't your Dragon Island also have the dragon cleansing pool? Can't the dragon cleansing liquid inside be used? Aoxing's figure stopped and looked at Xiaohua in a daze. After all, The years of experience in the stacked jadeite legacy realm made him feel close to Xiaohua. He almost regarded Xiaohua as a member of the dragon race. And the most special thing was that Xiaohua even became a dragon master on the Dragon Island. The happiest person in the entire Dragon Palace was him. He was sincerely happy for Xiaohua. He had received many benefits from Xiaohua, but he never thought that Xiaohua would refuse to give the dragon cleansing liquid to Great Elder Aojia. Why can't I give it to Great Elder? He lost a part of his primordial spirit to save us, Aoshing asked pitifully. Primordial spirit might not be much to human cultivators like you, but to my dragon clan, it is very important, Aoshing, Xiaohua said seriously. In the stacked jade legacy realm, Great Elder sacrificed his primordial spirit, but if you think about it carefully, he did it for you. It wasn't for this Xiao can still escape without his help. You can't say that. Aoshing closed his mouth, like a pitiful child of the dragon clan. His eyes were filled with tears, but he still argued. Although you don't need it, you still received his favor. Moreover, he treated you so well, and even gave you the title of Dragon Master. This is unprecedented on my Dragon Island. Don't you think he was using me? Xiaohua sneered. Aoshing let out a long breath. He looked into the distance, then looked in the direction of the Dragon Palace. He said bitterly, Of course I can see that. However, Great Elder also has his own difficulties. The unspeakable pain is still his, not mine. Xiaohua shook his head. You know how precious the dragon cleansing liquid is. Presumably, the dragon cleansing liquid in your Dragon Island's dragon cleansing pool has lost its effect after 1,000,000 years. I'm afraid these 3 drops of dragon cleansing liquid are the only ones left in this world, right? What? Aoshing suddenly wailed. His entire dragon body crawled in the air. His dragon claws were actually in a kneeling position. He said, Taoist Master Xiao, I beg you, you must save Great Elder. Second Elder has already seen some clues. If he suddenly makes trouble, my Dragon Island might fall into chaos. Looking at Aoshing's pitiful appearance, Xiaohua immediately felt a little bit of filial piety in his heart. Compared to the craftiness of the dragons in the stacked jade legacy realm, this filial piety made Xiaohua's heart soften. Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and helped him up. Aoshing's huge dragon body couldn't help but stand up when Xiaohua flicked his sleeve. I just can't see this pitiful appearance of yours. Did Fourth Elder teach you this? Xiaohua snorted coldly. Aoshing lowered his head, shook his head and said, No other than me, Great Elder doesn't dare to tell anyone. Master Xiao, I beg you, as long as you give me the dragon cleansing liquid, I'm willing to give you all the fun things in the palace. Why would I want so many of your toys? Xiaohua scolded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Say it, I can give you whatever you want. Aoshing heard that there was hope, so he hastily asked. Swear a dragon oath, as my dragon servant, you will be at my disposal for the rest of your life. Xiaohua replied coldly. Who would have thought that Aoshing didn't hesitate at all and said, Aoshing, swear by my dragon god's life, shut up. Seeing the layers of strange dragon patterns appearing, Xiaohua hastily scolded. This old man is just joking with you. Really? Aoshing, shut up. That indescribable dragon pattern disappeared. Aoshing opened his seemingly pure and flawless eyes and looked at Xiaohua. How am I going to give it to you? Xiaohua said fiercely. This old man owes your Dragon Island, but I just got 3 drops, and now I have to give one away. How? Aoshing went blank for a moment, then immediately woke up. He hastily took out the purple dragon crown and said, Put it in here. Humph! Xiaohua snappily took out a drop of dragon cleansing liquid from the space that looked like a pool and threw it inside. Just you wait! Aoshing seemed to be in a hurry to present a treasure to the Great Elder. He turned around and was about to fly away. Xiaohua shouted, Why are you in such a hurry? It won't be too late to give it to the Great Elder after we come out from the smoke tree. Who knows when you will come out? Aoshing shouted. I will go to the Dragon Palace first before talking to you. Don't be in such a hurry. Xiaohua thought of something. He hastily transmitted his voice and told Ao Xing about Jiang Hong's matter. You go and ask how to solve this matter. No problem. Ao Xing heard about this matter from Lu Yi. He agreed without hesitation. What a pitiful and cute child. Xiaohua looked at Ao Xing's cheerful back. The corner of his mouth revealed a smile. This kind of dragon who loves his clansmen is the hope of the Dragon Island. If he takes over the Dragon Island in the future, he will surely coexist peacefully with Ao Zhan. -13. Chapter 40-50. Xiaohua thought that Ao Xing would be delayed for a long time, but he didn't expect that Ao Xing would appear in his line of sight in just the time it took to eat a meal. At this time, Ao Xing's face was obviously more intimate. Oh? So fast? Xiaohua smiled. Could it be that the noise in the Dragon Palace Hall has ended? Ah? How do you know? Ao Xing was surprised. Hee, how can I not know? Xiaohua smiled and didn't explain. Ao Xing nodded. When I went, only the Great Elder and the Fourth Elder were there, the other elders had already left. Seeing that the Fourth Elder's expression was not good, I didn't dare to say anything, and only transmitted the 3 words Dragon Cleansing Liquid, and returned the purple dragon crown to the Great Elder. No way! What about the thing I asked you to ask? Xiaohua was flustered and exasperated. I haven't finished yet. Ao Xing smiled. The Great Elder took the purple dragon crown and asked me inexplicably, what does Xiaohua want? So I told him about Jiang Hong, and the Great Elder gave me a dragon bone. Saying that, Ao Xing gave a dragon bone to Xiaohua. Xiaohua looked at it, and knew that it was the heavenly dragon speech technique, so he handed it to the dragon veined Xiaohua without thinking. The Great Elder must be secretly proud of himself right now. Xiaohua smiled. How could he exchange something for the dragon cleansing liquid? This is a big bargain for him. It doesn't matter, Master Xiao, Ao Xing said seriously. If you want anything, just tell me, I will definitely help you. No need, no need. Xiaohua waved his hand. You better hurry up and take me to the smoke tree. Then, Ao Xing accompanied Xiaohua to talk while bringing Xiaohua to a dark place that stretched as far as the eye could see. This place was covered with ribbon-like seaweed. These seaweed were hundreds of feet tall, and each seaweed was like a big tree on land, divided into 2 branches in the middle. With so many seaweed gathered together, swaying with the sea water, it really looked like a lingering smoke wave. Xiaohua looked at these seaweed and smiled bitterly. This is the smoke tree, right? It really lives up to its name. These seaweeds are called smoke, like smoke from the mortal world. Ao Xing explained. This smoke looks soft, but it is actually very tough. Ordinary Dao's and Confucius's imperial artifacts Dao. Once one is caught by this smoke, it's hard to get away without special skills. Oh, there are even barbs on the smoke. Even the Dragon Clan doesn't dare to let the smoke stab us. If Ao Zanoff, of course, it smokes of the smoke. Master Xiao, please follow me. Xiaohua's to Xiaohua's, of this of nature of the of hua of the of this flight t of the fire of the t of the Xiaohua was a little surprised. Just as he finished speaking, a whirlpool suddenly appeared 1,000 feet in front of him. The whirlpool shot straight down, bringing with it a few feet of seawater. Under the whirlpool, the seawater really looked like a sharp thorn. Woo! The sharp thorn whistled and fell into the smoke, splitting it apart. In just a few breaths' time, the smoke swirled and surrounded the split space. These are the thorns! Ao Xing laughed. If you're unlucky enough to be pierced by the thorns, you'll inevitably fall into the smoke tree. That'll be troublesome. Aren't you afraid? Xiaohua looked left and right, but he couldn't see any danger. I'm a dragon, so I'm naturally sensitive to changes in the sea, Ao Xing replied. I can sense the thorns as soon as they're born, so there's no need to worry. Of course, sometimes the thorns are formed too quickly, so I can't sense them. As he spoke, Ao Xing's figure flashed, and sure enough, a bull-sized thorn suddenly shot out from the top of his head. Master Xiao, be careful! Ao Xing calmly stopped and reminded. Old man, about 3 feet in front of you. Just as Ao Xing finished speaking, a whirlpool of several feet suddenly appeared and smashed towards Xiaohua's head. Ao Xing was a little embarrassed, but he didn't say anything. After all, he knew how powerful Xiaohua was. Sure enough, Xiaohua looked up indifferently, and rubbed his hands slightly. Several crystal lights fell into the sea, and a huge whirlpool appeared, rushing towards the newly born thorns. Boom! With a muffled sound, continuous waves rippled out in all directions. Oh, not good! Ao Xing smiled bitterly. Master Xiao, you're a little reckless! Actually, Ao Xing didn't need to say anything. Looking at the waves spreading into the distance, and the thorns of different sizes appearing one after another, Xiaohua knew that he had caused a big trouble. Fortunately, the training has ended. If the dragon blood descendants were still here, I'm afraid many of them would have fallen, Ao Xing said helplessly. Now, let's wait for a while. That's the only way. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. I didn't expect this smoke tree to be so strange. Master Xiao, Ao Xing replied. No matter what, this smoke tree is still one of the 7 training grounds of my Dragon Island. If there isn't any danger, how can it serve as a training ground? If you have time, Master Xiao can go to Clear Snow, Baotu, Qiubo, Shijiao, Chunmeng, and Xiaoyu. The scenery there is much more beautiful than this smoke tree. Let's talk about it in the future. Xiaohua waved his hand. After waiting for the thorns to settle down, he once again followed Ao Xing into the depths. After flying for a few hours, seeing that they were gradually approaching the mountains, Ao Xing stopped and released his yuan will. Master Xiao, this is the place. This is called Xingqiu Feng. Ao Zhantian's message talisman was sent from here. Are you sure you didn't go the wrong way? Xiaohua released his divine will and swept the surroundings like a gust of wind. Of course, Ao Xing said proudly. I followed the 4th Elder's instructions. Master Xiao, can your divine will not be so strong? Following Ao Xing's exclamation, more thorns appeared around the smoke tree. These thorns were much bigger than before, and their range was also much wider. They were like thunderbolts that struck towards Xiaohua and Ao Xing. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He rubbed his hands together, and several crystal lights flew into the air. A water shield that was 1,000 feet long appeared above his and Ao Xing's heads. Rumble! The thorns landed on the water shield one after another, causing the water shield to shine brightly. Damn it, why can't I use my divine will in this smoke tree? Xiaohua spat and cursed. And this seaweed can actually block my divine will? Ao Xing shrugged. Master Xiao, it's not that I can't use it, but I can't use it so crudely like Master Xiao. Can't you be a little gentler and not let your divine will come into contact with the seaweed? Forget it. Xiaohua waved his hand and pointed at a place. Let's go over there. There seems to be some energy fluctuations there. Xiaohua activated his water escape technique and flew towards a distant mountain. Along the way, the smoke rushed towards Xiaohua. On the other hand, although Ao Xing's dragon body was huge, it merged with the seawater as it swam. The smoke swayed around the dragon body but didn't get close. Of course, Xiaohua didn't care about this kind of smoke. As his body swayed, the true qi around him overflowed and blocked the seaweed to the side. However, the seaweed was really strange. Although the true qi could block the seaweed also swallowed a lot of true qi. Why is there a deep hole here? Even Ao Xing was a little surprised to see a cave that was less than 3 feet deep in the depths of the seaweed, when he arrived at a hidden place in the valley. After all, the seaweed known as chimney smoke was capable of blocking origin sense and divine sense. Furthermore, it was impossible for an ordinary dragon bloodline descendant to reach the depths of such dense seaweed. It was truly not easy to find such a hidden cave. Hee, how could a pampered little elder like you know the difficulties of our Taoism cultivators? Xiaohua said proudly. Not to mention this place, even if it's 100 times more difficult, we Taoism cultivators can still find it in order to find cultivation techniques and spiritual treasures. Aoshin curled his lips and didn't refute. Xiaohua stood on the mountain peak above the deep hole and released a strand of divine will to slowly explore inside. After an entire meal, a strange expression appeared on his face and he said, Ao Jiantian is inside. He's really inside. Ao Xing was really impressed. Master Xiao, hurry up and save him. I have to ask him how he found this cave. Aren't you going down? Xiaohua asked with interest. Teacher Xiao, take a look at this cave. Is it a place that I can enter? Ao Xing curled his lips. I'm curious, why did the dragon descendant dig a cave here? Could it be that there's something strange about this? I'll go take a look, Xiaohua instructed. If you don't go down, then wait here. All right. Ao Xing swayed his dragon body and lay down lazily on the mountain peak. The murderous seaweed swayed around his dragon body, looking very warm and cozy. Xiaohua activated his escape technique and landed among the seaweed. When his feet touched the bottom of the sea, he raised his head to take a look. The seaweed was lush and green, and it was no different from the forests seen on the continent. Moreover, there were no paths around the seaweed, and it grew irregularly. It was extremely easy for humans to get lost in it. It was indeed an excellent place to gain experience. Xiaohua naturally didn't dare to go too far. He activated his body and flew toward the black hole in the depths of the seaweed. That black hole was among the seaweed, and there was no place to hide. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and decided not to hide. He just wanted to go into the black hole. Just as Xiaohua approached the seaweed, dozens of seaweed pounced on him like the tentacles of a sea beast, instantly binding him. Xiaohua looked at the seaweed around him. As if it had a life of its own, it firmly wrapped around his arms, legs, and other parts of his body. Then, the corner of his mouth slightly smiled. He raised his arms upwards, and the seaweed immediately let out a zhi-zhi sound. Under Xiaohua's enormous strength, it actually didn't break. Shua! Immediately after, a bunch of roots several times larger than the seaweed was pulled out from the ground by Xiaohua, raising a cloud of mud and sand. The mud and sand dyed the surrounding seawater turbid. -13. Chapter 40-51. This seaweed is indeed powerful! Xiaohua reached out and pulled the severed seaweed off his body. Then, he looked at his skin, which was slightly scratched by the seaweed's barbs, and thought to himself, even I am in such a state. If ordinary demons and humans come here, it is inevitable that they will be injured. After witnessing the power of the seaweed, Xiaohua simply pulled out all the seaweed around the hole and came to the entrance of the hole. There was no light in the hole, nor was there any seaweed. Xiaohua jumped into the hole and dove down easily. This black hole was not straight. Instead, there were many twists and turns. There were even some forks that Xiaohua was most afraid of. It seemed like this black hole was not used to search for treasures. As for the real reason, no one could say for sure. Xiaohua continued to dive down. After diving for more than 10 miles, he finally reached the end of a tunnel. This tunnel was not big, only a few feet long. Looking at the freshness of the soil, it should be newly formed. At the end of this layer of soil, a cluster of brilliant spring flowers bloomed. Ao Jiantian's body had already disappeared into the spring flowers. Only his head with closed eyes could be seen. Xiaohua had already seen it clearly with his divine sense. Although Ao Jiantian's head was also entering the spring flowers, it was moving very slowly. For the time being, he would not be in any danger. Thus, Xiaohua was not in a hurry to use any methods to save him. Xiaohua once again released a strand of divine sense onto the spring flowers. Just like before, the spring flowers immediately swallowed that strand of divine sense. Xiaohua stretched out a finger and lightly touched the spring flowers. A powerful suction force was born from the spring flowers, forcefully pulling Xiaohua's finger into it. Damn it! Xiaohua used all his strength to pull out his finger. Looking at Ao Jiantian's tightly shut eyes, he said, Ao Jiantian, I really don't know what to say about you. This is clearly a Dao sex forbidden array, and it is the kind of ancient forbidden array. How could you be so bold as to touch this forbidden array? Or rather, your luck is too bad. This black hole's tunnel should not lead to this forbidden array, but after you came in, you dug the tunnel to where the forbidden array is. You have to know that this forbidden array devours divine sense. It is not easy for others to discover it. Xiao Hua's complaints were one thing, but he still had to save him. He looked at the small patch of spring flowers that was revealed, but he couldn't see the whole picture of the formation. He simply patted his forehead and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. When Xiao Hua could clearly see the great array in front of him, he sucked in a deep breath. This was a great array with a radius of 100 miles. This great array was like a field of spring flowers connected together. Every spring flower bloomed with a pure blue brilliance, and the entire great array was like a beautiful flower garden located at the bottom of the pitch-black sea. What kind of forbidden array is this? Xiao Hua closed his eyes and pondered for a moment, but he didn't find any clues. In his heart, he was even more certain of his previous guess. To be able to set up a Tao sect formation at the training grounds of the Dragon Island, I'm afraid it's a divine ability that only ancient Tao sect cultivators have, right? However, what is the purpose of setting up this formation? Who cares? Let's save Ao Zhantian first. Xiao Hua pinched his chin with his hand and thought. This forbidden formation is set up on the Dragon Island. It borrows the water-type heaven and earth's origin energy. And the big formation is in the shape of a flower. It also condenses the wood-type heaven and earth's origin energy. If we want to break it, we must cut off the water-type heaven and earth's origin energy supply. Although this isn't too troublesome, it might damage the things inside the formation. Forget it, I'll just use the innate primordial water. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua took out a water bottle and activated his mental force. A strand of innate primordial water fell into the forbidden formation. As expected, when the innate primordial water fell, it didn't cause any reaction from the forbidden formation. As the innate primordial water separated Ao Zhantian's body from the formation, Xiao Hua released his mental force along the edge of the innate primordial water and easily rescued Ao Zhantian. Before Xiao Hua could send Ao Zhantian into the void, the Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua suddenly shouted with ecstasy. Fellow Immortal! There's Tian Xian's aura in this great array. What? Xiao Hua was stunned. He cried out in shock. How is that possible? How can there be Tian Xian on the Dragon Island? How come I didn't sense it? However, after Xiao Hua finished speaking, he laughed to himself first. Who said that the Confucian cultivator's Tian Xian couldn't appear on the Dragon Island? Looking at this Tao sect formation, how could Xiao Hua not know that the ancient Tao sect cultivators had taken the Confucian cultivator's Tian Xian here to suppress him? Even the immortal emperor of the Immortal Palace wouldn't have thought that the Tian Xian he had been searching for who knows how many years would be in the Dragon Island, right? Of course, even if the Immortal Emperor knew, he wouldn't have come here to take it, right? The Tian Xian's aura is extremely weak. I only sensed a strand of it just now, but it's gone now. The Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua said solemnly. However, I can be sure that Heaven's heart is here. Of course the Tian Xian is here. Xiao Hua nodded. Right now, we're just missing a piece of the Tian Xian. It's better to hide the Tian Xian on Dragon Island than anywhere else. The water here is abundant, and can conceal the aura of the Tian Xian. Using water to subdue water. We just need to get the Tian Xian. We don't have to break this great array. Xiao Hua said with a smile. This is a piece of cake for fellow Immortal. Xiao Hua looked at the place where the innate primordial water was after Ao Zhantian came out and nodded. It should be easy to go in, but we don't know what's inside the great array. Let's go in first. Xiao Hua smiled. Now that we're here, even if it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, we have to go in and take a look. All right. Xiao Hua withdrew Ao Zhantian and flew into the air. He landed in the middle of the Xiantian true water and used his psyche power to protect himself, just like how he dodged his enemies in the past. Then, he slowly followed the flow of the Xiantian true water toward the depths of the forbidden formation. After a full hour, Xiaohua's feet sank and a strong corrosive force was produced, quickly invading his skin. Xiaohua frowned and a light flashed on the surface of his body as he tried his best to resist the corrosion. When Xiaohua pulled out his mental force to take a look, he was pleasantly surprised. Innate heavy water? Fuck, the seniors of the Taoist faction are really meticulous. Xiaohua prostrated himself in admiration. With the array outside and the innate heavy water inside, not only could the Tian Xian's aura not leak out, it would also be very difficult for someone to take the Tian Xian away. However, this was extremely easy for Xiaohua. Xiaohua took out the clear water bottle and activated his mental force. The innate heavy water was immediately sucked into the clear water bottle. This great array was dozens of kilometers wide and was filled with innate heavy water. Xiaohua spent a lot of time just to collect it. When he finished collecting the innate heavy water, the turtle shell in the center of the great array flashed with a deep blue brilliance. Xiaohua's figure flashed and arrived in front of the turtle shell. He released his mental force and rolled up the turtle shell, preparing to put it into the space. However, just as Xiaohua's mental force touched the turtle shell, rumble. Within the space of dozens of kilometers, tens of thousands of thunderbolts were produced from the great array that was as bright as a spring flower. They tore through the void and pounced on Xiaohua. Come on! Xiaohua rubbed his hands and a green light appeared between his eyebrows. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua also helped. In an instant, tens of thousands of thunderbolts were produced from Xiaohua's body. 5 Qi righteous thunder, 3 corpses yin thunder, and 9 heavens divine thunder met the great array's water-type heavenly thunder wave after wave. Rumble. The strong sound of thunder tribulation and the destructive aura of landslide filled the entire great array in the blink of an eye. After a full meal's time, the thunderbolts gradually stopped, and Xiaohua's battered figure was revealed from the thunderbolts. Although he tried his best to defend himself and urged the thunderbolts to counterattack, the all-pervasive water-type lightning still poured down on his body. Although Xiaohua's body was incomparably tough, he still suffered heavy injuries under the thunderbolts. Fortunately, the injuries were within the range that Xiaohua could endure. Seeing that the thunderbolts had subsided, Xiaohua released his mental force again and easily sent the turtle shell into the space. Let's go. Xiaohua, who had obtained the will of the heavens, did not dare to delay. His figure flashed and flew towards the place where he came from. Above the forbidden array, the innate true water was still flowing slowly. The way out was very smooth and they did not encounter any more dangers. When Xiaohua arrived at the peak of the smoke tree, he actually heard Ao Xing snoring again. That sometimes big and sometimes small bubble floated next to his nose along with the snoring sound. Oh? Why are you only back now? Ao Xing was awakened by Xiaohua's movements. He quickly got up and looked around him. Where's Ao Zhantian? Did you save him? And I've already saved him. Xiaohua took Ao Zhantian out of the space and raised his hand to touch Ao Zhantian's forehead. However, just as he was about to wake Ao Zhantian up, Xiaohua frowned and retracted his finger. He took out the Kunlun mirror and sucked Ao Zhantian into it. Ao Xing was a little confused and asked curiously, What's wrong? Why didn't you wake him up? Let's talk about it after we leave the Dragon Island. Xiaohua replied with a smile. Ao Xing glanced at Xiaohua and knew what he was worried about. He did not ask and only reminded him. When entering the Dragon Island, regardless of whether it is the dragon shell or the universe bracelet, you cannot bring a living person. You have to be careful. I know! Xiaohua nodded. When we reach the Dragon Island, I will wake Ao Zhantian up. Master Xiao, are you leaving now? Hearing Xiaohua mention the Dragon Island, Ao Xing suddenly felt reluctant to part. He said with melancholy, Are you not going to the Dragon Palace to say goodbye? Or are you going to stay in my palace for a few days? I don't dare, Xiaohua said with a smile. I'm not afraid of thieves stealing, but I'm afraid of thieves thinking about me. I think it's better for me to leave this place as soon as possible. Is there a need for that? Ao Xing's parting mood was slightly alleviated by Xiaohua's words. The Dragon Island was naturally prepared long ago. It was similar to the Dragon Island when they arrived, but it was much smaller. Xiaohua woke Ao Zhantian up. Ao Zhantian looked at the familiar groove and the Dragon Island and immediately understood. He wanted to ask something, but was stopped by Xiaohua's gaze. When they got on the Dragon Island, Ao Xing was unwilling to let go. He pulled on Xiaohua's sleeve and was unwilling to let go. He had lived for so many years, but he had never met a human who was so considerate to tell him stories and accompany him through life and death. In the end, Xiaohua had no choice but to send Ao Xing to the Dragon Palace. He promised that as long as the Dragon Palace agreed, he would bring Ao Xing out of the Dragon Island to train. -13. Chapter 40-52. Not long after, Ao Xing returned happily, much to Xiaohua's surprise. Although the Dragon Hall didn't want Ao Xing to follow Xiaohua out for training, they still agreed to let Ao Xing send Xiaohua back to the hidden Immortal continent. Xiaohua had no choice but to let Ao Xing enter the travel dragon. Two people and a dragon were naturally a little bored. After Ao Xing sent the few dragons who were riding the dragon to another place, Xiaohua released Lu Yi and the other disciples to play with Ao Xing. Seeing how Xiaohua was able to bring disciples without telling the Dragon Island, Ao Zhantian naturally understood how Ao Moyun escaped death. However, he didn't ask too much and only briefly explained his experience in the smoke tree. Ao Zhantian's experience was naturally lackluster, far less exciting than Xiaohua's experience. Even finding the deep cave was a coincidence. Apart from some treasures that Ao Zhantian was unwilling to reveal, he basically didn't obtain anything. Xiaohua pondered for a moment, and took out a magic treasure refined by the green-robed Xiaohua from his space and gave it to Ao Zhantian, using the excuse that he obtained it in the stacked Jade Legacy realm as a gift. Ao Zhantian was overjoyed and thought of Xiaohua's guidance in the travel dragon. After thanking Xiaohua for accepting the magic treasure, he asked Xiaohua to explain. Xiaohua didn't stand on ceremony and sat down cross-legged, imparting his cultivation experience bit by bit. Time passed quickly, and several months passed in the blink of an eye. Sensing that the travel dragon had stopped, Xiaohua opened his eyes and said with a smile, "That's all for today. Fellow Taoist Ao, if there's a chance in the future, let's spar again." There was a look of gratitude on Ao Zhantian's face, and he hurriedly rose to his feet before extending a respectful salute. "Previously, I thought that going to the Dragon Island was the greatest opportunity of my life, but now I know that meeting Master Xiao was my true opportunity. Master Xiao, please accept a bow from this junior." "Hee, you're too polite." Xiaohua smiled as he accepted Ao Zhantian's bow. Although Xiaohua had spoken on behalf of Ao Zhantian in order to resolve the karma caused by the heavenly heart of water qi, these few months of teaching disciples were real. Even Xiaohua's own disciples had not received such treatment. Thus, although Xiaohua's words were polite, he did not stop Ao Zhantian. After paying his respects, Ao Zhantian said sincerely, "Master Xiao, now that the dragons have stopped, they must have reached the hidden Immortal continent. If you don't have anywhere else to go, why don't you stay in my cave abode for a while?" "No need." Xiaohua looked at Ao Xing bringing Lu Yi and the others over and said with a smile, "This Xiao is also going into seclusion. I've accumulated enough over the past few days. If I don't go into seclusion, I'm afraid there will be some trouble. Junior will wait for the day Teacher Xiao comes out of seclusion. That day will definitely be the day that the three continents will focus their attention on." Ao Zhantian replied respectfully. Although he didn't know that Xiaohua was already the dragon master of the dragon tribe, he knew that even the Immortal Palace wouldn't dare to touch Xiaohua when he saw that even the minor elders of the Dragon Island had come to send him off. Xiaohua's cultivation had already grown a pair of wings. Xiaohua kept Lu Yi and the others and followed Ao Xing out of the dragon travel. They were now in a calm sea. Xiaohua released his divine sense and saw the land 1,000 miles away. Although this land looked unfamiliar, as long as it was the hidden Immortal continent, there would definitely be a path that led to the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Ao Xing. Xiaohua turned his head and said with a smile, even if you send me off 1,000 miles, there will still be a farewell. This time, you've sent me off for more than 1,000,000 miles, right? Teacher Xiao. Ao Xing's heart was filled with reluctance. He asked sadly, when will you come to the Dragon Island again? Xiaohua smiled and patted Ao Xing's paw. He said, this old man should be asking you this. When will you leave the Dragon Island and go to the 3 rivers and 4 seas and even the 3 continents to gain experience? All right. Ao Xing nodded. His eyes were filled with determination as he replied, I know. After returning to the Dragon Island, I will definitely cultivate diligently with the Great Elder and strive to leave the Dragon Island as soon as possible. Xiaohua had the bearing of Teacher Xiao. He warned, your dragon tribe is the pride of the heavens and is naturally tyrannical. This is also why your dragon tribe is arrogant and lazy. Perhaps the lack of descendants is the reason why your dragon tribe is unable to dominate the 3 continents. However, your lack of ambition and ambition is the key to your dragon tribe's decline. Instead of searching for the illusory dragon realm secret technique, why don't the Dragon Island innovate and think of your own path from a realistic point of view? Yes, I understand. I will definitely tell the Great Elder. Ao Xing replied respectfully. There's no need to be too formal. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. The Great Elder might not have not thought of my words. The changes in the stacked Jade Legacy realm this time might be his doing. This? I don't know. Ao Xing replied with a puzzled expression. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. He pulled Ao Zhantian with his left hand and said, Ao Xing, this old man will be leaving now. We will meet again if fate allows. After he finished speaking, lightning flashed around Xiaohua's body and he disappeared in an instant. Hiss! Ao Xing looked at Xiaohua's mysterious lightning escape technique and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In the stacked Jade Legacy realm, Xiaohua had always been carried by Ao Xing. He didn't expect that Xiaohua's escape technique had already exceeded his imagination. Ao Xing's eyes were filled with a sense of fanaticism. Roar! He roared towards the sky. The wind and rain within 100 miles started to blow. A voice rang out in the wind and rain. Master Xiao, I will catch up to you. Hee hee. Xiaohua, who had already flown far away, could faintly hear Ao Xing's fighting spirit being stimulated. He smiled in his heart. The dragon tribe had been peaceful for a long time. If there wasn't some stimulation, how could there be a new life? After flying to land, Xiaohua let go of Ao Zhantian and cupped his hands. Taoist Ao, you and I will also bid farewell here. All right. Ao Zhantian had long regarded Xiaohua as his senior. He bowed and said, this junior will take his leave. After Ao Zhantian stepped onto the flying ship and flew far away, Xiaohua looked around and released Little White from the space. Huff huff. The little white dragon swam in the air for a while before transforming back into Xiaohua, who was wearing a crimson Taoist robe. He smiled and said, the feeling of reforming my body is indeed not bad. This taste of freedom. I haven't experienced it in a long time. And freedom is now in your hands. Go and travel by yourself. Xiaohua encouraged. You have cultivated for a longer time than I have, and you have experienced a lot. There are many things that I don't need to say. However, you have to be careful of the Dragon Island. That day in the Dragon Palace Grand Elder clearly knew that you and Taoist Long Mai were reforming together. However, he only mentioned Taoist Long Mai and didn't ask you to come out. I don't know what he is planning. Now that the enmity between the 10 tribes of the Dragon Island is showing signs of easing, we shouldn't get involved. I understand, Xiaohua. The little white dragon smiled and said, I am only going out to train for a few years to solidify my incomplete dragon body. I definitely won't provoke the Dragon Island. In fact, if there are any troublesome places, I will hide and immediately return after my body solidifies. It's good that you understand. Xiaohua smiled. You should go too. Let's see what these 3 continents are like. Perhaps there will be even better opportunities. All right. The little white dragon cupped his hands and roared before heading towards the sea. Hee, the little white dragon is also suffocating. Xiaohua watched the little white dragon fly away and secretly felt happy for him. Several hundred years ago, he should have succeeded in transforming into a dragon. However, his body was destroyed by the Xiunian cult. Afterwards, he fled in panic and his soul was saved by me. During these several hundred years, he stayed in my mysterious dark clouds to cultivate. Now that he has completed his body solidification, how can he not go out and relax? Yes. Long Mai Xiaohua's voice came from within his body. The dragon transformation art is not a simple technique. For Little White to be able to cultivate the dragon transformation art with his python body, who knows how many years he spent and who knows how many dangers he encountered. Without a heart as firm as a rock, it is extremely difficult to achieve. He should go out for a walk. Otherwise, it will be detrimental to his future cultivation. Then what about Taoist? Xiaohua patted his own forehead. Long Mai Xiaohua also flew out and changed into Xiaohua's appearance and asked, I am naturally different from him. Long Mai Xiaohua smiled and said, My main body is Long Mai. I am used to being calm. Cultivating the dragon transformation art is even more natural. Moreover, do you think I can leave Taoist right now? Haha, seems like Taoist also wants to go out for a walk. Xiaohua laughed loudly. Long Mai Xiaohua did not hide his thoughts and replied, That is natural. Not just I, Taoist green robe, Taoist Confucian Taoist etc. Which one of us does not want to go out and take a look? It is just that we are still unable to completely leave Taoist right now. Perhaps soon. Xiaohua solemnly promised. We have already begun to comprehend the dragon clan's fake body technique. When we have succeeded in cultivating the fake body technique, we will take a look at that seven-colored conch and my Shang Hua Ming's god statue. Perhaps we will discover something. At that time, I will send everyone out for training. Many thanks. Long Mai Xiaohua cupped his hands and bowed, while Confucian Xiaohua and the others also thanked him. However, Long Mai Xiaohua reminded again. Fellow Taoists, if other fellow Taoists leave, it won't affect your cultivation in any way. However, if this Taoist leaves, it will be detrimental to your cultivation of the Tao sex cultivation method. You have to be prepared. I have already thought about this. Xiaohua nodded. I's nascent soul is not like ordinary Taoist cultivators. All the meridians in it are opened, the same as the meridians in the physical body. I only need to cultivate to the body fusion stage, and the physical body and nascent soul will become one. Then, the physical body will not need its own meridians and can cultivate with the nascent soul's meridians alone. But the problem is, can Taoists persist until then? And can I's physical body fuse with the nascent soul? Looks like we can only take one step at a time. Long Mai Xiaohua naturally knew Xiaohua's difficulties. Xiaohua replied, Actually, in the worst case, I can only give up my physical body and cultivate the Crimson Soul technique according to Do Shan Jun's cultivation technique. It is still early. Taoist doesn't have to make a decision so early. Long Mai Xiaohua said with a smile. Taoist, go into seclusion first. Indeed. Xiaohua nodded. Looking at Long Mai Xiaohua said, But before returning to the soaring Dragon Mountain range, shouldn't Taoist wake up Jianghong first? -13. Chapter 4053. Ha ha ha, of course. Xiaohua laughed and replied, The forbidden technique of the North Sea Dragon Palace is similar to the Heavenly Dragon technique. It is very obscure for the Heavenly Dragon clan, but for I, it is very simple. The secret technique that the Great Elder gave me in return is also very accurate. I have already comprehended it during this time. Fellow Taoists, please wait a moment. Xiaohua waved his hand and took out Jianghong's dragon body. Dragon Vein Xiaohua transformed into his dragon form and chanted in the dragon language. The heaven and earth origin energy within 1,000 li swarmed over and followed Dragon Vein Xiaohua's dragon claw down. Droplets of heaven and earth origin energy fell onto Jianghong's dragon body like raindrops. When the sweet rain entered her body, it was as if she was molting. A layer of strange fluctuation undulated on the surface of Jiang Hong's dragon body. Following that, 3-colored brilliance blossomed from the inside of her dragon body. Jiang Hong's dragon body suddenly trembled. Roar! Jiang Hong opened her eyes and roared. She pounced towards Dragon Vein Xiaohua. Roar! Xiaohua naturally regarded Jiang Hong as a junior. He also roared and released his dragon aura to suppress Jiang Hong. However, looking at Xiaohua's appearance, he was only joking with Jiang Hong. Buzz! A hurricane rose. That substantial dragon aura suddenly flipped Jiang Hong in the air. Jiang Hong's huge dragon body rolled helplessly. Roar! Jiang Hong saw that she was no match for Xiaohua. She howled and clouds appeared around her body. She wanted to escape towards the sea. Where are you going? Xiaohua laughed and shouted loudly. He blocked Jiang Hong's path. Roar! Jiang Hong was anxious and wanted to pounce towards Xiaohua. However, when she saw Xiaohua's appearance, she unconsciously froze on the spot. You! Jiang Hong seemed to have forgotten Xiaohua's name, but she had a deep impression of Xiaohua's appearance. He. Xiaohua smiled and said, Xiao Yun, I am Xiaohua, Lu Yi's master. I have already saved you from the North Sea Dragon Palace. Lu Yi. What an ancient name, what an unforgettable name. These 2 words were like a clap of thunder in Jiang Hong's ears. Jiang Hong's figure fell into the air, unable to move for a long time. After a long while, Jiang Hong's body trembled slightly, and she turned into her human form. She asked anxiously and expectantly, My brother, where is he? So far away, yet so close. Xiaohua was very satisfied with Jiang Hong's reaction and said with a smile, Ah? Jiang Hong was shocked and hurriedly turned to look at Dragon Vein Xiaohua. Ha ha! Dragon Vein Xiaohua laughed loudly. This old man is not Brother Lu. Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and said, Lu Yi is inside the magic treasure. You just came out from inside. Ah? Jiang Hong's face paled as she cried out. Master, my brother, he saw it, yes. Xiaohua nodded. This. Jiang Hong's face was pale as if she had lost her parents. Even her voice was trembling. Xiaohua smiled and said, However, Lu Yi said that your body is very beautiful. Even more beautiful than when you transformed into Xiao Yun? Really? Jiang Hong's pale face flushed red. She couldn't believe her ears. Of course. Xiaohua raised the Kunlun mirror and said, If you don't believe me, this old man will let Lu Yi tell you personally. Don't. Jiang Hong's face flushed red as she hurriedly stopped him. Master, wait a moment, what? Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. However, when he saw Jiang Hong raise her hand and a bright mirror appeared, he smiled again. A woman dressed up for her lover, wasn't that right? Jiang Hong carefully dressed up and even took out a golden hairpin from her bosom and inserted it into her black hair. At this time, she looked at Xiaohua with some apprehension and whispered, Master, can you let Lu Yi come out? Of course. Xiaohua shook the Kunlun mirror. Lu Yi was sent out from the space where the Kunlun mirror's light pillar landed. As early as when Xiaohua took out Jiang Hong's dragon body, Lu Yi's heart began to beat wildly. At this time, his figure appeared outside and he saw Jiang Hong at a glance. At this time, Jiang Hong had already matured a lot. She was no longer as young and inexperienced as she was before. However, the familiar corners of her eyes and brows, as well as her affectionate gaze, immediately made Lu Yi drunk. Little Yun! Lu Yi pulled Jiang Hong and called out, You're awake? However, feeling the trembling of Jiang Hong's hand, Lu Yi knew that he was being rude and hurriedly let go. However, he only loosened a little. Jiang Hong's hand grabbed his hand and her face bloomed with a smile. Yes, brother, it was Master who saved me. Brother? Hearing this name that he often heard before, Lu Yi's heart actually gave birth to a trace of loss. However, he still forced a smile on his face and nodded. Yes, Master is very resourceful. Of course, he can save you. He. Seeing the change in Lu Yi's expression, how could Jiang Hong not know what he was thinking? She smiled faintly and said, "Yes, brother has done so many good things. Of course, he will be repaid. Brother has met such a good master. Even I am envious." Lu Yi's eyes lit up. He hurriedly grabbed Jiang Hong's hand and looked at Xiaohua. "Master, don't we still lack a junior sister? You won't accept Xiao Yun as your disciple, right?" Xiaohua looked at the impatient Lu Yi and said with a smile, "What? Don't you think that the heavenly abode river is in trouble? When did I say that?" Lu Yi's face turned red as he hurriedly argued. "AI." Hearing Xiaohua mention the heavenly abode river, Jiang Hong's face showed melancholy. She gradually loosened her grip on Lu Yi's hand. "Master." Lu Yi was anxious. He increased the strength of his hand and said, "If you don't accept, disciple will let Marshal Uncle Green Robe accept, ah?" Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Needless to say, Xiaohua was very satisfied with being a master in the space. He even went to guide Lu Yi and the others in their cultivation. "There's no need to let fellow Taoist Green Robe accept Jiang Hong as his disciple," Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a smile. "He can't teach Jiang Hong anything. This old man will accept her as his disciple." "Master?" Lu Yi didn't understand the situation and looked at Xiaohua for help. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "If fellow Taoist wants to accept her, then accept her. You are also a five-clawed true dragon of the dragon race. If Jiang Hong follows you, the heavenly abode river will also benefit." "Five-clawed true dragon?" Jiang Hong's face showed ecstasy. Dragon Vein Xiaohua was just teasing her and didn't reveal his true body. Although Jiang Hong didn't see it with her own eyes, how could she doubt Xiaohua's words? Jiang Hong immediately knelt on the ground and said, "Disciple Jiang Hong greets master." After Jiang Hong cowed out 9 times, Dragon Vein Xiaohua helped her up and said, "Good, this old man will accept you as his disciple today. Cultivate well and don't let Lu Yi bully you in the future." "Master." Jiang Hong lowered her head shyly, while Lu Yi stood at the side and smiled foolishly. Time always urged people to grow old. The 2 children who depended on each other in the past were now youths. The man was full of love and the girl was full of love. They were the best couple in the world. "Okay, let's return to the Kunlun Wonderland and greet the few senior brothers." Xiaohua smiled and waved the Kunlun mirror to send them into the space. Then, he said to Dragon Vein Xiaohua, "Fellow Taoist, why can't you enter the space?" "I'm not too sure." Dragon Vein Xiaohua was also puzzled. "Maybe it's because I use too much dragon cleansing liquid to shape my body, and it's different from the heaven-earth yuan qi in the space. But how can little white dragon enter? And that dragon cleansing liquid, isn't there a large pool in our space?" Xiaohua shook his head slightly. Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a smile, "There's no need to delve into such details. If there's time, I should study the dragon jade more. That's the inheritance of the dragon realm's heavenly dragon technique." "That's right," Xiaohua also echoed. "Fellow Taoist, you've worked hard. After I return to the soaring dragon mountain range, I'll have to cultivate in seclusion. I'm going back," Dragon Vein Xiaohua said as he entered Xiaohua's body. "Fellow Taoist, quickly return." Then, Xiaohua took out the heavenly horse flying carriage and called out Fujiwen. He had him drive the flying carriage back to the soaring dragon mountain range. Then, he sat inside the flying carriage and entered the space. Within the space, green-robed Xiaohua had already tidied up the things he obtained from the Soul Cultivator ruins in the spring-cleansing Forbidden Sea. Now, there were a lot of huge dragon corpses and dragon crystal boulders piled up in the open space. The corpses of dragon worship and strange insects were also placed there. In this stacked jade ruins, the dragon race had lost a lot of huge dragons. The dragon corpses that Xiaohua handed over were only 40% of the total. However, this 40% was enough to make the elders of the Dragon Hall dumbfounded. Jade Archive Xiaohua ordered green-robed Xiaohua to tidy up these huge dragon corpses and dragon crystal boulders. Then, he waved his hand and dragon worship floated in the air. Dragon worship had lost its feudal belt and its foundation to intimidate the dragon race. However, it was not killed. At this time, dragon worship twisted its body like a huge silkworm cocoon. The upper body of this silkworm cocoon was somewhat similar to the dragon race, but it had no dragon horns or dragon claws. Dragon worship twisted in the air and looked at Jade Archive Xiaohua with difficulty, its eyes full of fear. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at dragon worship, which had swallowed a lot of dragon brain matter, and sighed slightly in his heart. He raised his hand and waved again, sending it to a secluded place, leaving it to fend for itself. Then, Jade Archive Xiaohua's complicated gaze fell on the strange insect's body. Although this strange insect was blown up by Ao Xing's sacred dragon seal, the remaining corpse was more complete than the last time. In particular, this strange insect was 10 times bigger than the one Xiaohua encountered last time, and its strength was also much stronger. Thinking about how the dragon race's powerful body was easily torn apart by this strange insect's hind legs, even someone as strong as Jade Archive Xiaohua shuddered. Almost without thinking, Jade Archive Xiaohua picked up the strange insect's sharpest tail, formed a seal with both hands, and began to refine the execution spirit yuan light again. After the execution spirit yuan light was refined, Jade Archive Xiaohua sent the sword gourd into the thunder water of the immortal beheading platform to be tempered and warmed. Then he looked at Xiaoguo. At this time, Xiaoguo was in a very mysterious state. She sat cross-legged in front of the Jindan that looked like the sun. Her eyes seemed to be open, and her body was trembling slightly. A layer of faint fluctuation on the surface of her body was changing along with the strange phenomenon inside the Jindan. Xiaohua, who saw the obscure fluctuation, was really surprised because this fluctuation was similar to the incantation used to refine the Jindan. It was similar to the fluctuation inside the Jindan. -13. Chapter 40-54. Hee. No matter if this golden core is a dragon core or an ancient golden core, being able to let Xiaoguo comprehend is better than anything else. Jade Archive Xiaohua did not dare to disturb Xiaoguo's comprehension. He faintly smiled and was about to leave. GG. A few thunderous low humming sounds came from the immortal execution stage. A black shadow streaked across the sky and landed in front of Jade Archive Xiaohua. Wasn't that the already awakened Little Lei? Lightning flashed around Little Lei's body, as its 2 fleshy wings faintly flapped. Hundreds of tiny lightning bolts flickered in its pitch-black eyes. When the lightning disappeared, a look of closeness and longing appeared in its eyes. Jade Archive Xiaohua stretched out his hand and gently rubbed Little Lei's head. He smiled and said, "You're awake?" "GG." Little Lei's eyes were filled with joy. He chirped and raised his wings with joy. Traces of lightning appeared on the edges of his wings. "It's good that you're awake," Jade Archive Xiaohua said again. "This old man has a cultivation method for lightning beasts. Are you willing to cultivate it?" "GG." Lightning Beast jumped up. His wings were tightly wrapped around his back. His small body was slightly bowed, showing respect and caution. Jade Archive Xiaohua slightly smiled. He stretched out his finger and pointed at Little Lei's forehead. Rumble! Thunderous sounds came from Xiao Lei's body. Lightning also burst out from his body. Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand to stop the lightning from expanding. Then, he carefully looked at Xiao Lei. Xiaohua saw that Little Thunder's eyes were tightly closed, and the lightning flashed along with Little Thunder's eyebrows. Xiaohua knew that Little Thunder was memorizing and comprehending the inheritance of the Thunder Beast, so he was relieved. He sent Little Thunder into the thunder water below the Immortal Executioner stage, and then his figure flashed and landed on the Ice Worm King's egg, Water Pattern Butterfly, and Dream Mirage Butterfly's egg. Although these insect eggs had not hatched yet, Xiaohua had already sensed a strong vitality within them. He believed that it would not be long before these little things were born. Xiaohua was really looking forward to seeing what was special about these insect eggs that had been separated by yin and yang. Woo! A black light flashed. The divine power centipede also flew over and swam around Jade Archive Xiaohua. Hee. You're also not willing to be left out? As Jade Archive Xiaohua spoke, he raised his hand and tapped the back of the Divine Power Centipede. Although the Divine Power Centipede was powerful, it was too low level. Jade Archive Xiaohua knew that there was no inheritance of the Divine Power Centipede in the Fey race. Woo-woo! The Herculean centipede seemed to be very happy. The antennae in front of its head waved rapidly. Jade Archive Xiaohua's heart moved. He smiled and said, "Your primordial spirit is relatively weak. Even if you split it into yin and yang, I'm afraid you can't compare to other demonic beasts. How about this? Since the Dragon Hall's Grand Elder can use the Dragon Cleansing Liquid to repair his primordial spirit, I'll give you some Dragon Cleansing Liquid as well. Let's see if you can have some good fortune." As he spoke, Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand and grabbed. Several drops of Dragon Cleansing Liquid fell on the Divine Power Centipede's body. Zzzt. With a burst of crackling sounds, the Dragon Cleansing Liquid entered the Divine Power Centipede's carapace. Strands of dragon patterns faintly appeared. The Divine Power Centipede let out a low roar and its carapace quickly curled up. A wave of dragon chi enveloped the Divine Power Centipede. Oh, right. There's still dragon worship and the strange insect. Seeing the changes in the Divine Power Centipede, Xiaohua's heart moved. He sent the Divine Power Centipede near dragon worship and the strange insect's carapace. After the Divine Power Centipede evolved, it would be able to use it. Since everyone has their own fortune, this old man will also have to work hard. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked around the space. At this time, the space was already 3 million li wide. It was even bigger than when it was in the blood pool of gods and devils. Jade Archive Xiaohua's slightly proud voice sounded like thunder in the entire space. His figure gradually disappeared. Xiaohua's mind left the space. He didn't dare to rest and immediately closed his eyes to meditate. After an unknown amount of time, the sky gradually darkened. The sky was filled with dense red clouds. In the dark night sky, the Pegasus flying chariot's pure white brilliance became even more dazzling. It was like a meteor streaking across the sky. Suddenly, Xiaohua, who was meditating with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. His divine sense swept forward like a hurricane. Gotcha! High up in the sky, a bolt of lightning flashed, illuminating the space within a radius of dozens of miles. What appeared along with the lightning was a continuous stretch of black clouds. These black clouds were connected to one another, like a mountain range, and like the waves of the sea. Woo! A gale suddenly rose, covering the sky as it rolled towards the earth. However, before this lightning and hurricane could fully display their might, a muffled "humph" sound was heard. It was like someone yawned in the air. The space within a few hundred li stopped moving forward. Then, within 1,000 li, countless light shadows fell, penetrating the heaven and earth. In this light shadow, the space was distorted. Fragrant flowers floated out from the void. Layers of noble chi condensed into pearls, sprinkling light and darkness over 1,000 li. Who? Fu Jiwen was a little late to react. Seeing all kinds of strange phenomena, he hurriedly stood up from the flying chariot. The dots of runes gushed out from his body and turned into armor. Immortal Palace's inspector? Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. His divine sense swept out like lightning. However, after crossing 1,000 li, it was blocked by the light shadow. Inside the light shadow, the law chains swam more arrogantly than pythons and dragons. How could Xiaohua not know that this was the Immortal Palace's inspector? However, when a crisp sound rang out, Xiaohua knew that he was wrong. Because in the flying flowers, a small winding path appeared. A female official dressed in palace attire gracefully walked over. The female official's voice rang out. "Husband Fu, are you all right? Isn't this the female official Bian who returned to the Immortal Palace?" "Wife?" Fu Jiwen was dumbstruck. He really didn't expect that the one who appeared in such a big battle array between heaven and earth was actually his wife. "This concubine Bian greets Taoist Master Xiao." Bian only said one sentence to Fu Jiwen before turning her head. She stood in the air and respectfully saluted. Then she said to Xiaohua. Xiaohua stepped out of the flying chariot. He narrowed his eyes and looked behind Bayan. In the light shadow, a flower-covered hooding appeared. This hooding was so abrupt. However, in the sea of flowers that stretched for several hundred li, it was so elegant. A small path leading to a secluded place appeared in the middle of the flowers. Flowers fell on the small path, like broken glass. The petals withered, giving birth to an indescribable melancholy for no reason. No need for formalities! Xiaohua's gaze couldn't penetrate the sea of flowers. He simply retracted his gaze and looked at Bayan thoughtfully. My master is waiting inside hooding. Spiritual Master Xiao, please! Bayan didn't say any more nonsense. She stepped aside and said with a smile. Xiaohua was somewhat enlightened. He looked at Fujiwen on the flying chariot and said with a smile. Could it be that you're here to propose marriage? Your master is really a wonderful person. He, spiritual master will naturally know when you go. Bayan blushed and replied with a smile. All right. Xiaohua landed on the small path with large strides and said, I just returned from Dragon Island. It just so happens that I have some treasures. If it's used as a betrothal gift, it'll be worth it. However, Xiaohua walked a few steps and didn't see Bayan following him. He turned his head and said somewhat strangely, Bayan, you're not coming? Bayan slightly tilted her head and replied, This concubine is shy. Spiritual master, please go. Haha, Xiaohua laughed and stepped into the flower path. The flowers on the left side were like thousands of swaying hearts, waiting for the right person to pick them. Xiaohua walked through the flower path and arrived in front of Huiding. He saw the moonlight and candlelight flickering in Huiding but didn't see anyone. He didn't find it strange and stepped into Huiding. Huiding was still the same Huiding and the red candles were still the same red candles. However, another person stood up from the jade chair behind the stone table. Xian? Xiaohua was dumbstruck. He looked at the picturesque beautiful woman in palace attire in disbelief and cried out in surprise. How come it's you? How come it's not me? Xian's eyes flashed with craftiness. She asked back, Could it be that there's only the little monk Tipu and not Princess Xian? Xiaohua looked at this little girl who had never expressed her feelings but had already been engraved in his heart. From time to time, she would smile beautifully in his mind. He replied with a bitter smile. My imagination is really limited. I really didn't expect. You're actually the one Bayan talked about. And some princess. I didn't expect it either. Xian smiled more brilliantly than the hundreds of flowers outside Huiding. The little monk Tipu is Xiaohua. I also didn't expect Xiaohua to be the famous Zhenren Xiao of the hidden Immortal continent. I didn't intend to lie to you. Xiaohua's explanation was a little weak. I was just afraid of bringing you trouble. I'm not afraid of trouble. Xian said. You're the one who's afraid of trouble, okay. Xiaohua was helpless. He raised his finger and pointed at his heart, saying, I've already apologized countless times in my heart. Unfortunately, you can't hear it. Loquacious. Xian curled her lips slightly and said disdainfully, You're a little monk with a glib tongue. I won't believe you. Then you should practice the mind connection of the Buddhism sect. Xiaohua laughed. With your identity, Mahavairakana will definitely teach you personally. Tisk. Xian sneered. Men don't say what they think. Even if I'm proficient in the mind connection, I'm afraid I can't hear what you think. Xiaohua blinked his eyes and scratched his head with his hand, as if he was thinking hard. After a moment, he asked curiously, I don't seem to have been to Chan New country? Humph. Good thing you didn't go. Xian snorted. If you had gone, I wouldn't have come. Hee. Xiaohua smiled. What are you laughing at? Where's Li Jing? Seeing Xiaohua's evil smile, Xian stamped her feet and asked. The smile on Xiaohua's face disappeared. She looked straight into Xian's eyes and said word by word. On Caste Love Mountain, one's heart is broken. Hiss. Xian was a little surprised. She sucked in a breath of cold air and unconsciously shook her head. Fairy Jing is indeed a decisive person. Admirable, admirable. You came, just to tell me this? Xiaohua rubbed his nose and asked with a bitter smile. Of course not. Xian's gaze was gentle. She pointed at the jade chair beside the stone table and said, Take a seat first. After Xiaohua sat down, Xian waved her sleeve and a few plates appeared beside the red candles on the stone table. There were peaches of immortality, mutant fruits, a jade pot, and 2 wine cups. -13. Chapter 4055. This is the famous peaches of immortality of the Immortal Palace. You can try it. Xian sat down, picked up the jade pot, and slowly poured out 2 cups of clear wine. He said warmly, Empress Immortal Elixir was made from these peaches of immortality. Okay. Xiaohua naturally didn't care about immortal elixirs. However, seeing how attentive Xian was, he still took one and took a bite. When the peach melted into spiritual liquid and entered his stomach, Xiaohua praised. It is indeed the legendary peaches of immortality. It lives up to its name. If you like it, you can eat it all. Xian was delighted and pushed the jade plate to Xiaohua. That won't do. I still want to try the imperial wine of the Immortal Palace. Xiaohua smiled and reached for the wine cup. Unexpectedly, Xian hurriedly blocked him and said unnaturally, Don't be in such a hurry. Tell me what you've been doing all this time. Damn! Xiaohua held his forehead and said, You even know about Fairy Jing. What else do you not know? I know. I want to hear you tell me in detail. Xian said coquettishly. Okay. Xiaohua looked around and said in a low voice, If we talk, can others hear us? Don't worry. Xian said with a smile. Even the Immortal Emperor can't hear us. How is that possible? Xiaohua didn't believe it. If you can find me so easily, how can the Immortal Emperor not know? Don't forget what we got in the Xianshui Palace. Xian reminded him softly. Not bad. Xiaohua understood and gave him a thumbs up. You're really something. You took that thing and eloped to the lower realm, bah! Xian spat. What do you mean eloped? Tell me. Xiaohua knew that Xian only wanted to listen to him speak, so there was no need to pay too much attention to the specific details. Thus, he roughly explained what happened after they parted. Xian held his cheeks and looked at Xiaohua for a long time. It was unknown whether he was listening, watching. Under the red candles on the left and right, Xian's beautiful face became even more focused, causing Xiaohua's heart to be intoxicated. Xiaohua! After Xiaohua finished, Xian came back to his senses. There was some panic in his eyes. He raised his wine cup and said, It's been hard on you. Come, let me toast you. All right. Xiaohua raised his wine cup and lightly clinked it with Xian's wine cup before placing it on his lips. The slightly viscous wine gave off a mellow fragrance that made one feel as if they were floating when smelling it. Xiaohua slightly raised his head and poured the imperial wine into his stomach. A faint floral fragrance emerged from his mouth and tongue. I brewed this wine myself. It's not some imperial wine. It doesn't have a name, and it doesn't have any special effects. Xian put down the wine cup, looked at Xiaohua, and said in a low voice, Are you disappointed? No. Xiaohua replied with certainty. Even if it's clear water, to be able to watch you drink it, it's the world's #1 spiritual wine. Xiaohua! Xian bit his lips. His face was red as he stared straight into Xiaohua's eyes. Xian! Xiaohua also looked at Xian. His gaze was like a clear spring, flowing into each other's hearts. At this time, silence spoke louder than words. For a full meal's time, neither of them opened their mouths, nor did they move their fingers. In the end, Xian raised his left hand from the stone table and raised it in the air. At the same time, Xiaohua, who had a tacit understanding, also raised his right hand. The two people's hands slowly touched each other. A cold and delicate fragrance came from Xian's hand. The two people looked at each other, and their palms touched each other. Suddenly, the red candle seemed to be blown by the wind and jumped slightly. Between the light and the darkness in Huding, Xian and Xiaohua opened their hands almost at the same time, and their 5 fingers clasped together tacitly. Xiaohua! Xian's voice was close to a moan, low and trembling. I was worried that your strength would increase too fast and attract the attention of the Immortal Emperor. But now you're the Dragon Master of the Dragon Tribe. I'm afraid that my Immortal Palace won't dare to touch you at will, so I'm relieved. Come, I'll toast you again. Good. Seeing that Xian was reluctant to let go of his left hand and only used his right hand to fill 2 cups of wine, Xiaohua's heart melted. He raised his cup and said, This toast is for you. Tell me about your life. Okay. Xian calmly finished drinking and put down the wine cup. He clasped Xiaohua's 10 fingers with one hand and propped his cheek with the other. He looked at Xiaohua with somewhat blurred eyes and told him about his life. Xian's experience was naturally not as rich as Xiaohua's, but those palace fights also made Xiaohua's hair stand on end. In the end, Xian said, Also, after my Immortal Palace's Heaven's Choice Assembly, the Immortal Emperor and Mahavairakana have reached a tacit understanding. The so-called war between immortals and Buddhas has been eliminated. You're now the Dragon Master, but don't be in the limelight too much. Beware of being noticed by the Immortal Palace again. Ah? Xiaohua was shocked. How is that possible? The war between immortals and Buddhas is imminent. Not to mention the Confucian cultivators of the hidden immortal continent sharpening their swords. Even the Buddhist sect of the Elysium world is rubbing their fists. How can they stop fighting just like that? And you men only know how to fight and kill. Xian's fingers moved slightly and fiercely grabbed Xiaohua. He rebuked. Once the war between immortals and Buddhas starts, who knows how many cultivators will die? Grand Mist Ancestor is adding fuel to the fire from behind, wanting to gain some benefits for the Tao sect. Could it be that you also have the same idea? I'm wrongly accused. Sophistry is like sweet talk. Xiaohua has never lacked it. He opened his mouth and said, I just feel that things happen too suddenly. Previously in the God-Devil Blood Pool, the Buddhist sect and the Confucian cultivator clan fought fiercely. How can the Immortal Emperor and Mahavairakana ignore the feelings of the two clans and compromise like this? I also don't know the specific reason. Xian said with a smile. But the so-called compromise is nothing more than the satisfaction of common interests, or a common threat that forced the two sides to join hands. And the result of this compromise is that the Buddhist sect can preach in my hidden immortal continent, and my Confucian cultivators can also clear up doubts in the Elysium world. In this way, both sides' interests can be satisfied, so why not? The problem is... Xiaohua frowned. The Buddhist sect in Yu Province's Longevity Town had great results. They took the initiative, so why did they suddenly stop? Instead, they let the Confucian cultivators enter the Elysium world? Mahavairakana wouldn't be so easy to talk to, right? Of course it's not that simple. Xian explained. This compromise has a process, it needs a test. Oh? What test? Tell me in detail. Xiaohua was surprised, but then he said with a smile. Of course, if it involves the secret of the Immortal Palace, then there's no need to say. Xian's left thumb stuck up. Xiaohua's right thumb also stuck up. The two of them seemed to be playing. Their thumbs stuck together and turned slightly. Xian's gaze became gentle again as he said with a smile. Before the Heaven's Choice Assembly, of course it's a secret. But now, the Elysium scripture-seeking plan has already begun, so it's not a secret anymore. Elysium scripture-seeking plan? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. What does that mean? Is it going to the Elysium world to ask for Buddhist scriptures? And Mahavairakana had just comprehended the Tripitaka Mahayana Buddhist scriptures. It seems like ordinary monks can also condense relics. His request is that if we want to stop the war, we must allow him to explain the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures in the hidden immortal continent. Xian replied. But our immortal palace naturally can't agree so easily. Our request is that there must be a bodhisattva who can go to the great lightning tune temple to bring the scriptures to the hidden immortal continent. That's why it's called Elysium Scripture-Seeking Plan. Isn't that simple? Xiaohua said with a smile. Just find a bodhisattva to go to the great lightning tune temple and bring the scriptures over. Do you think everyone else is more stupid than you? Xian pursed his lips and said with a smile. The moment Mahavairakana's suggestion came out, the Immortal Palace went into an uproar. All the Immortal Palace officials opposed it. However, the Immortal Emperor's decree had already been decided, so they racked their brains to increase the difficulty of finding this bodhisattva. In the end, they finally came up with a method that was almost impossible. Let's hear it. Xiaohua was surprised. What kind of impossible method is it? First of all, this bodhisattva must be recorded in the Elysium world. Xian seemed to take out something she liked to share with her beloved. Her beautiful face smiled until her dimples appeared. Secondly, this bodhisattva must depart from the immortal town in the Yu province of the hidden immortal continent. First, he must go to the great lightning tune temple in the Elysium world and then return to the immortal town. Thirdly, this bodhisattva must preach the Confucian scriptures in the Elysium world. When he comes back from the Elysium world, he must preach the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures in the hidden immortal continent. This doesn't seem to be difficult. I can do it. Xiaohua asked in confusion. How is this impossible? Don't be anxious. Xian rebuked. The most important thing is that this bodhisattva cannot have any Buddhist or Confucian cultivation. Or it could be said that he cannot have any cultivation. Moreover, not only can this bodhisattva not borrow any magic power in the process of preaching the scriptures in the Elysium world, he also cannot borrow any magic power in the process of going from the Elysium world to the hidden immortal continent. How is this possible? Xiaohua was flabbergasted. How can a bodhisattva who only chants scriptures and recites Buddhist scriptures without any magic power come to the immortal town? And, even if he came to the immortal town, how can he smoothly return to the great lightning tune temple in the current situation? Difficult. In the process of preaching the scriptures in the Elysium world, whether it is the immortal emperor, the Mahavairakana world revered or the great saint of the demon clan, none of them can directly make a move. Otherwise, the Elysium world revered will be considered a failure. Why is there a great saint of the demon clan? Xiaohua was a little puzzled. Xian ignored Xiaohua's question and said, If there is really a great difficulty, there seems to be some flexibility, but I am not too sure about the specific boundaries. I am curious. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This war is disadvantageous to the Immortal Palace. The Mahavairakana world revered finally compromised. Why is the Immortal Palace still making so many difficult problems? Isn't this driving them away? -13. Chapter 40-56. Even the Immortal Emperor has his difficulties. Xian says faintly. Don't tell me what you did in the God-Fiend Blood Pool and Dragon Island wasn't for this. Then what about Vairocana Buddha? Why would he agree? Xiaohua asks with a smile. Xian also frowns. Yeah, when I heard about this, I was also worried for the Immortal Emperor. I thought that Vairocana Buddha would not agree no matter what, or even lower the conditions. Who knew that Vairocana Buddha did not refute at all and immediately agreed? This made all the officials in the Immortal Palace dumbfounded, feeling that they had fallen into Vairocana Buddha's scheme and smashed their own feet with a rock. Could it be that Vairocana Buddha had already planned this? Don't forget, Vairocana Buddha is... At this point, Xiaohua laughs himself. Vairocana Buddha has the art of karma. How could the Immortal Emperor not know how to predict the future? Xian nods. Sutra seeking in extreme bliss was naturally proposed by Vairocana Buddha. If he had plans, that would be normal. But the problem is, how can there be such a bodhisattva? Even if there is such a bodhisattva, the entire sutra seeking in extreme bliss is definitely not just seeking sutras. Xiaohua can naturally see the strangeness in it. Xian's thumb is still twirling with Xiaohua as it replies. Of course. Sutra seeking in extreme bliss is just a gimmick. There will definitely be many difficulties along the way. Not only will my 100 family association obstruct it and prevent it from being completed normally, even some heavenly king protectors of the Buddhist sect will think of ways to cause trouble. There are also 1,000 demons, sacred realm demons. Xiaohua reminds. Those great sages will probably not watch from the side and will not allow the Immortal Emperor and Vairocana Buddha's plan to be completed. Not just them. Xian says with a smile. You Dao sect cultivators will definitely not let this bodhisattva safely walk to the Great Lightning Tune Temple in extreme bliss, right? It has nothing to do with me. I will immediately go into seclusion when I return. I will not care about anything. Xiaohua raises his left hand and replies solemnly. It's best that you don't get involved. Xian replied. The sutra seeking in nirvana is also a process of elimination. Many forces will show up. The Heavenly Palace and the Big Lane Temple will do their best to protect this bodhisattva. But if anyone shows up, they will definitely strike with lightning. Who knows, maybe the Grand Mist Ancestor will suffer a great loss this time. If that's the case. Xiaohua looked at Xian with a smile and said with a double meaning. Do I have a great chance? Xian naturally understood the meaning behind Xiaohua's words. He unconsciously blushed and said in a low voice. This? I don't know. Seeing Xinjin so shy, where was the arrogance of a princess of the Immortal Palace? Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't been close to a woman for several hundred years, so his mental fortitude was inevitably weakened. However, when he felt Xiaohua's palm burning hot, Xian immediately jumped in fright. He used his left hand to pinch Xiaohua's right hand, wanting to pull his hand out. How could Xiaohua let her have her way? He hurriedly tightened his grip. Xian whipped a few times but didn't have any effect. He glared at Xiaohua and hurriedly changed the topic. However, Xiaohua, don't underestimate Mahavairocana's methods. Do you still remember the little monk Xiaohui? Of course. Xiaohua nodded. Is he already Manjushri Bodhisattva? Yes, he's now in Yu Province's Longevity Town. He received Mahavairocana's Buddhist edict to find a sutra seeker in Yu Province. Xiaohua was even more baffled. Why didn't Manjushri Bodhisattva go to Western Paradise to find a Buddhist disciple? Isn't this giving up what's near at hand to seek what's far away? Xian rolled her eyes at Xiaohua and said, You're stupid! Longevity Town is the starting point of Western Paradise's Sutra Seeker. Moreover, Mahavairocana has already issued a Buddhist edict several decades ago. Every temple in Western Paradise must send a disciple to Longevity Town to worship Buddha. If a suitable disciple can be found, then wouldn't Western Paradise's Buddhist disciple need to travel thousands of miles to hidden Immortal mainland? Why do I feel that there's something fishy about this? Xiaohua said thought-provoking. Mahavairocana must have done something. I haven't found out what he did yet. Xian said with a smile. However, there seems to be some clues about the Sutra Seeker in Western Paradise. Ah? Xiaohua was speechless. This person must have been arranged by Mahavairocana. You're wrong. Xian said with a smile. Mahavairocana doesn't know about this. It was discovered by Immortal Emperor when he used the clear sky mirror to search hidden Immortal mainland. However, since Immortal Emperor knows, then Mahavairocana also knows. Who's this monk? How can he be so powerful? Even I want to go and take a look. Xiaohua didn't care about it in his heart. He just followed Xian's words and asked casually. This monk came from Western Paradise's Golden Mountain Temple. His Buddhist name seems to be Chuanzang. Boom! Xion's words hit Xiaohua like a thunderbolt. Xiaohua's expression became sluggish. His thumb that was moving along with Xion's thumb also became empty. Xion immediately felt that something was wrong. She stopped and asked curiously, "What's wrong? You know this monk?" Xiaohua looked at Xion's pure face and said with a bitter smile, "Don't forget, I've been to Western Paradise. I've really been to Golden Mountain Temple. However, I didn't say that there was a monk called Xuanzang in Golden Mountain Temple. He's called Xuanzang. This monk is the disciple of Great Master Nirvana." Xion suddenly realized and said with a smile, "He seems to be a disciple of Golden Mountain Temple after you and I left Western Paradise. How could you have seen him that day?" Xiaohua was somewhat absent-minded. He was almost certain that this Xuanzang was Jiang Luer. After all, although Jiang Luer had been in meditation for hundreds of years, he didn't have any psychokinesis. However, he still had some doubts. If Xuanzang was Jiang Luer, why didn't he cultivate Buddhism? An ordinary Buddhist trekked from Western Paradise to hidden Immortal mainland. That kind of difficulty and danger was definitely not something that ordinary people could imagine. How could Xion not see Xiaohua's absent-mindedness? She asked tentatively, "Could it be, you have some karma with this little monk?" Xiaohua collected his thoughts and shook his head. "I still don't know who this monk is. There's no need to talk about karma now. However, if there is some karma, this matter. Be careful," Xion said with concern. "Anyone can seek benefits in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. Only Taoist cultivators can't. And I know," Xiaohua said with a smile. "I'm also a Tipu. You're so cunning," Xion rebuked. Xiaohua looked at the empty wine cups on the stone table and said with a smile, "How can 2 cups of newly brewed wine be enough?" With that, Xiaohua raised the pot with his left hand and poured the clear wine into the 2 empty wine cups. Xion's eyes showed a slight pain, showing her helplessness. She pulled her left hand out of Xiaohua's hand. Xiaohua naturally didn't loosen his grip, but Xion shook her head slightly and tightened her grip. Xiaohua didn't dare to stay any longer and loosened his grip. Xion's left hand took out a jade eye from her bosom and said with a forced smile, "Xiaohua, I know you are looking for the real refining method of the wishful rod. This is the refining method I asked for from the master of Jade Pure Palace. It also records the location of some magnetism in hidden Immortal mainland. I hope it will be useful to you." "Oh, thank you very much!" Xiaohua beamed with joy. He took the jade eye and was about to look at it. Xion stopped him and said, "You and I don't need to thank each other. You can take it and look at it later." "Okay." Xiaohua took back the jade eye and seemed to have thought of something. He asked softly, "I still have a question about the 5 cheese unifications." Xion's eyebrows slightly moved. She lowered her head and didn't look at Xiaohua. She said, "Presumably, you have already met the great scholar of true Confucianism in the God-Devil Blood Pool and obtained a certificate of true Confucianism. This true Confucianism is an organization whose purpose is to find the real cultivation purpose of Confucianism. Because today's Confucianism is no longer the Confucianism of the past, the path of cultivation seems to have some deviations. Many ambitious people in the Immortal Palace and the 100 schools of Confucianism have already seen the hidden dangers, so they formed such an organization. Although the true Confucian hasn't found the true purpose of Confucian cultivation, we've already discovered that the true cultivation techniques of Confucian cultivation are recorded in the 5 heavenly tomes. These 5 heavenly tomes aren't complete heavenly tomes. One of them is half a heavenly tomes. Of course, even the 4.5 heavenly tomes are nowhere to be found. No one knows where these heavenly tomes are scattered in the hidden Immortal continent, the pure land of ultimate bliss, or the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. Perhaps it is the will of heaven, or perhaps it is man-made. The true meaning of Confucianism has already been hidden in the dust of time. Oh, right, that certificate is not only a certificate, it is also a life-saving amulet. If you encounter a great danger, you can use your true chi to crush it. It will give you an unexpected surprise. While speaking, Xian's eyes unexpectedly have some clear tears. She raised her wine cup and said, "Darling Xiao, come, for your future, let this concubine toast you." Okay. Although Xiaohua felt that Xian's mood was somewhat fluctuating, and he felt that it was inappropriate, he had plenty of time to talk to Xian, so he did not mind. He raised his cup, clinked it, and said with a smile, "My future is also your path." Just as Xiaohua was about to finish the cup in one gulp, Xian suddenly stopped. She raised her hand and extended it to Xiaohua's cheek. She lightly touched Xiaohua's skin and said in a low voice, "Xiaohua, do you think this concubine is too casual? You and I have only met once. Even though we have experienced life and death in the mysterious water palace, but..." Of course, Xiaohua was also very surprised. After all, women were not like men, especially women of Confucianism. Which one of them did not emphasize the 3 obedience and 4 virtues and not look at indecent things? As a princess of the Immortal Palace, Xian could not indulge her feelings even more. Xian's private meeting with him in the lower realm was indeed a great taboo in the Immortal Palace. "I think you must have your own reasons," Xiaohua replied after some consideration. "Moreover, if you don't say it, how can I know your heart? This is an opportunity given to us by the heavens." Phew! Xian seemed to let out a long breath, as if she had put down a heavy burden. A charming smile appeared on her face, and she raised her wine cup and drank it up. Kacha. As Xian's wine cup was emptied, the entire night sky was instantly filled with thunderbolts. It was as if heavy rain was pouring down, and all the tranquility and beauty were completely shattered. Looking at the left side of the huiding, the brilliant sea of flowers now seemed to be ravaged by thousands of hands, and the petals fell miserably into the flower path. "What's going on?" Xiaohua was stunned and looked at Xian with some confusion. Xian forced a smile on her face and said, "Darling Xiao, after today's parting, I don't know when we will meet again. You have to cultivate diligently." Kacha. Another thunderbolt struck huiding. The whole huiding shook, and the wine pot on the stone table was knocked over. However, the wine pot was already empty, and not a single drop of wine flowed out. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air, and finally understood why Xian took so long to fill the 3rd cup of wine. Alas! Xiaohua sighed and looked at Xian. "Why didn't you say so earlier? Sooner or later, we will have to part in the end." Xian raised her eyebrows and looked at the large watery clouds in the night sky. There was some bright brilliance at the edge of the watery clouds, as if the light of dawn was about to come. "Just like the sky, dawn will come eventually." Xian. Looking at Xian's eyebrows and the swaying light in the night sky, Xiaohua understood that he couldn't say anything more at this time. He gently held Xian's waist, and Xian struggled with all her might. However, seeing Xiaohua's lips on her forehead, Xian closed her eyes in both pain and happiness. Her hands nervously grasped each other, and trembled slightly. However, this trembling suddenly stopped, just like Xian's body, which suddenly stiffened. Her tightly closed eyes and Xiaohua's arms suddenly opened, and her eyes were filled with disbelief and surprise. -13. Chapter 40-57. After a while, Xiaohua's lips left Xian's forehead. The faint green light had already disappeared. Xiaohua looked at Xian and said in a low voice, "Go back. One day, I will go to the Immortal Palace to find you." Xian's eyes rekindled with hope. "I know you will. Xiaohua's name will definitely resound throughout the 3 continents." Kacha. 9 bolts of lightning struck down simultaneously, shattering huiding, the sea of flowers, and everything else. A chair on the back of a colorful phoenix appeared out of thin air. Xian reluctantly landed on the chair, and he saw tens of thousands of colorful clouds shooting up into the sky. Pillars of noble chi propelled the colorful phoenix up into the sky slowly. Xiaohua! A sweet smile appeared on Xian's face. She said, "Seeing you today, this life is enough. If fate wills it, we will meet again." Xiaohua slightly raised his hand and said with a smile, "There is no need for fate. We will meet again soon. Xian, you have to believe me." "Okay. I believe you." Xian smiled. The entire night sky was lit up, and the rainy night shone brightly. Not far away, Tao Wu's figure also turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. Along with the colorful phoenix, it disappeared into the void. "Damn it, this is a little strange." Seeing all the strange phenomena disappear, Xiaohua carefully thought about it, and felt a little apprehensive. Xian came out for no reason and left for no reason. Her strange emotions were really strange. "Disciple." Xiaohua raised his hand and said, "Have you had enough?" "No." Fu Jiwen obviously knew what Xiaohua was teasing him about. He said honestly, "There are Immortal Palace's inspectors nearby. How would I dare to be rash?" "What did Tao Wu say?" Xiaohua asked in a low voice. "I feel that there is something strange about it." "Indeed." Tao Wu's words were also strange. Fu Jiwen agreed. However, no matter how much I tried to get her to say, she didn't say anything. In the end, when thunder fell from the sky, she sighed and said, "Thunder rises, rain falls, flowers wither, 3 cups of fate end. From now on we are strangers." "'Tis." Xiaohua smiled coldly. He looked at the dark sky and said, "What nonsense, end of fate. Xian treated me like this. How can I let her down? However, master, this matter is rather difficult." Fu Jiwen whispered. "Jianhong bears the burden of the Grotto Heaven River. If Lu Yi wants to form a relationship with Jianhong, he has to bear the burden of the Grotto Heaven River. Moreover, Princess Xinxin is the princess of the Immortal Palace. Master, your task is very important. Of course, for the sake of my own happiness and yours, I have no choice but to cultivate properly." Xiaohua nodded and said, "Let's go, let's hurry back to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Master will inform you that we still have to make a trip to the Longevity Town." "Master, why are you going to Longevity Town?" Fu Jiwen was puzzled. "Aren't you rushing back to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range to enter seclusion?" "Plans cannot keep up with changes," Xiaohua said helplessly. "I have no choice but to go to Longevity Town. A very important relative of mine is there." "Ah? Master still has relatives?" Fu Jiwen was extremely shocked. "That might not be the case." Xiaohua's heart was somewhat irritated for no reason. He waved his hand and said, "We can only go and take a look to know." "Master," Fu Jiwen asked in a low voice, "from here to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range, we just happened to pass by Pingshan country. What do you think?" Xiaohua nodded. "No problem. Since I have already promised you, I will definitely do it. This Kunlun Immortal Realm is extremely spacious. Moreover, the heaven and earth origin qi is increasingly abundant. Not to mention your Fu family, even if you Zhongquan and Chan Yuan 2 families come here, it won't be a problem." "Thank you, Master." Fu Jiwen was extremely happy. Disciple has already told them. However, junior brother Yu and junior sister Chang's relationship with their families is not good. Therefore, they do not plan to go back and invite their families to stay in Kunlun Immortal Realm. Although junior brother Wang Bianfei did not say anything, it seems that he also misses his mother. Alas, the ancients have a saying that when one's parents are present, one should not travel far. It really makes sense. Xiaohua sighed and said, "Blood ties cannot be cut off no matter what. Master originally wanted to go to Longevity Town first, and then return to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range. It seems that I should return to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range first." Thinking about Wang Bianfei's mother missing her son in the soaring Dragon Mountain Range every day, Master feels very uncomfortable in his heart. "Yes." Fu Jiwen's expression was somewhat gloomy. Disciple's parents are already old. If disciple does not return, I'm afraid that I will not be able to see them anymore. Let's go, Xiaohua said with a smile. Then what are you hesitating for? Of course, your parents chasing you out of the sect is also for your own good. But then again, even if they did something wrong, think about how they raised you. You should be filial to them every day. Fu Jiwen previously had a gap with his parents because of Tao Wu's background. Now that Tao Wu was a female official of the Immortal Palace, wouldn't she be 100 times more noble than an ordinary woman in the world? Therefore, the grudge in Fu Jiwen's heart disappeared, and he was eager to return home. Several months later, in the mountain range on the west side of Pingshan country, Xiaohua stood on the flying carriage with a smile. Seeing Fu Jiwen fly back dejectedly, he said with a smile, "What? Your parents did not come out with you." My parents did not believe that Tao Wu was a female official of the Immortal Palace, Fu Jiwen said with a bitter smile. No matter what disciple said, they always said that disciple lied to them. Haha, it seems like they saw through your previous plan in an instant, Xiaohua said with a smile. Master did not agree that day. You used the Immortal Palace as a cover, but did not have the Immortal Palace's token. How could you persuade them to go to the Immortal Palace? Besides, without the proper ceremony, it would not be legitimate. Why would they go to the Immortal Palace with you? Actually, the most important thing is that mother's health is not good, and father is not willing to leave Pingshan country. As the saying goes, it is difficult to leave one's homeland, Fu Jiwen said with melancholy. But the more it is like this, the more disciple is worried. Master understands. Xiaohua nodded. Lightning flashed around his body as he said, "Look at Master's methods! Master, you can't really." Fu Jiwen suddenly remembered what Xiaohua had said to him earlier. Without waiting for Fu Jiwen to finish, Xiaohua's figure disappeared. All right. Fu Jiwen sat on the flying carriage and quietly looked in the direction of Pingshan country. He said helplessly, "Looks like I can only use force." In less than half a cup of tea's time, lightning flashed near the flying carriage and Xiaohua's figure appeared. He said with a smile, "Let's go, disciple." "It's done. Thank you for your trouble, master." Fu Jiwen smiled and urged the flying carriage to fly towards the soaring Dragon Mountain range. At this time, Yu province was not as calm as Xian had said. The Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators were still fighting openly and covertly. Chaotic Buddhist senses and eye-clearing techniques appeared in the air from time to time. Fu Jiwen had only been flying for a few days, but there were already several groups of Confucian cultivators blocking his path. In the end, Xiaohua put away the flying carriage and had Fu Jiwen accompany his parents in the space, while he flew towards the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Xiaohua returned to the Fortune Gate not just a day later. Xiongyi and the other disciples did not expect him to return so soon. They were ecstatic to welcome him. Xiaohua's actions in the Fiend God blood pool had spread throughout the hidden Immortal continent. Naturally, the disciples of the Fortune Gate had also heard of it. The scheming disciples like Xiongyi had long seen the hope of Xiaohua's rise. They also saw the Fortune Gate's reputation shaking the hidden Immortal continent in the future. They were full of confidence in their own futures. Xiaohua sat on the Fortune Dao Palace's throne. He did not ask about the Fortune Gate's development during this period. Instead, he explained his cooperation with the Flowing Merchant Union in detail. He also ordered Xiongyi, Lanji, and Li Xiang to bring out some spiritual herbs, medicinal pills, and things from the Forbidden Spring Sea. He then released Wang Baifei and asked him to invite his mother. When Xiongyi and the others saw that Xiaohua did not ask about the Fortune Gate's affairs, they knew that he trusted them. However, they still mentioned some important matters. When Xiaohua heard that due to the recent war and famine on the hidden Immortal continent, a large number of refugees had appeared, and that the Fortune Gate had accepted tens of thousands of children as disciples in order to expand their forces, he frowned. He pondered for a moment, and his consciousness entered the space to discuss with the green-robed Xiaohua. He then ordered Li Xiang to divide the disciples and gather them in one place. When Xiongyi heard this, he immediately thought of the tens of thousands of disciples that Xiaohua had accepted in the Jiang country's capital. He hurriedly advised, "Master, you still have to cultivate. With so many low-level disciples, it's better to let the disciples teach them." Xiaohua smiled and said, "My fortune gate has just been established, and its foundation is not stable. We should recruit more disciples. But if we recruit so many disciples at once, the low-level disciples won't be able to teach them. After all, they also have to cultivate." Yes, disciple did not consider it properly. Xiongyi's face was burning. Disciple only feels that they are pitiful, Xiongyi. Xiaohua shook his head and said, "You did the right thing. Master is not blaming you for this. If you did not accept them, they would have starved to death the next day in the wilderness. Even if my fortune gate does not develop, we must do these good deeds. Master means. There is no need to say more now. In short, leave the disciples that you can teach, and Master will take the rest." "All right." Seeing Xiaohua's determination, Xiongyi did not refute. Li Xiang frowned again. "Master, didn't you just come back? Why do you still want to go out? It can't be considered going out." Xiaohua smiled and said, "I heard that the Longevity Town is going to put on a good show of seeking scriptures in paradise. Master wants to go and take a look." So that's how it is." Prince Lan smiled and said, "Disciple has long heard that the Buddhist sect has pasted a Buddhist list in the Longevity Town, waiting for a suitable arhat to reveal the list. It has already been half a year, right? No suitable arhat has appeared. I'm afraid this matter will be ruined. The show that Master wants to see won't happen." "Absolutely not." Xiaohua smiled. But just as he said this, Xiaohua's heart suddenly moved and he stood up from the jade chair. Excitement appeared on his face as he exclaimed, "That's right, although there are not many arhats who can go to paradise to seek scriptures, there is definitely more than one. Why must Jiang Luer send himself to death?" -13. Chapter 40-58. Master. Xiongyi and the others looked at each other, not knowing what Xiaohua was talking about. "Master." At this time, Wang Yifei brought his mother to the main hall and was about to greet Xiaohua. Xiaohua flew in the air, waving the Kunlun mirror in his hand. A beam of light covered the two of them as he said, "Go to the Kunlun paradise first, we'll talk later." He then turned to Xiongyi and asked, "Are those disciples ready?" "Of course." Xiongyi hurriedly stood up and answered, "Those who can be taught and those who can't be taught are separated. There is no need for special preparation." "Good." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Bring Master there. Master suddenly thought of something and needs to do it immediately." "Actually, if Master has something to do, there is no harm in doing it first. We'll talk about it after you're done," Xiongyi answered with a smile as he led the way. Xiaohua shook his head with a wry smile. "Master thought that matter was already confirmed, but I didn't expect. Master received the news too early, the real thing hasn't happened yet. Therefore, Master is a little flustered." Xiaohua followed Xiongyi to the back of the mountain and looked at the neat rows of huts. They were very similar to the huts he saw in the Imperial Thunder sect. He nodded with satisfaction and then took out the Kunlun mirror. He released his consciousness and took the hut and the boy inside into the space. Then, without daring to delay, Xiaohua nodded to Xiongyi and the others and flew out of the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Looking at Xiaohua's back as he flew away in a hurry, Xiongyi was a little confused. He pondered inwardly, Master has already accepted more than 10,000 disciples, and now he has taken in another 20,000 children. In total, he has 30,000 disciples, which is more than the soaring Dragon Mountain range's Fortune Gate's disciples. Could it be that Master has other plans? Xiaohua didn't know what Xiongyi was thinking. He had already activated his flying technique and rushed towards the Longevity Town, wanting to stop Monk Chunzong before he took down the Buddha list. Of course, the premise was that Chunzong was Jiang Luer. Looking at the familiar scenery below him, Xiaohua didn't dare to be too arrogant. He lowered his body slightly, and used the appearance-changing technique, turning into a small nose and small eyes Zhang Xiaohua. Then, he took out his Confucian robe, held the feather fan in his hand, and used his flying technique to rush to the Longevity Town. Very quickly, the path that Xiaohua, Yuanya, Lu Yi, and Xiao Jian had taken to leave Longevity Town appeared beneath him. The scenery was still the same, but the people on the road were no longer the same people from back then. See! Xiaohua flew for a while and saw the Buddha in the air and the believers on the ground. He released a bit of his telekinesis, but it wasn't tight. Xiaohua gasped in surprise and exclaimed, "Why is there so much power of faith here? Could it be that the power of faith belongs to Xi Hang?" As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the 99-meter-tall Guanyin Bodhisattva standing in midair in the distance. Needless to say, the true body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva was the real Xi Hang. But the real Xi Hang had already passed away, and only the fake Xi Hang existed in this world. No wonder Mahavairakana revered Buddha had the idea of seeking scriptures in nirvana. This Longevity Town is just a town, and in Namwu Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body already has so much power of faith. If the entire hidden immortal continent was filled with temples and Bodhisattva's golden body, how much power of faith would that be? Xiaohua greedily inhaled. He knew that if he released the Bodhisarira now, perhaps Bodhi would immediately attain enlightenment. Unfortunately, in this Longevity Town, even if the Buddha Sarira wasn't in seclusion, Xiaohua would definitely not dare to release it. Thanks to the innate divine restriction in my Naiwen palace, Xiaohua rejoiced as he flew. If it wasn't for these innate divine restriction concealing the Buddhist aura, even if the Buddha Sarira didn't want to come out, this rich power of faith would have fallen into my Naiwen palace. At that time, it would be impossible to conceal it. This is Jiangqiao Temple? When Xiaohua flew closer, he used the clear eyes technique to look. He had already noticed the changes in Jiangqiao Ridge, and unconsciously became a bit dazed. After a moment, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Damn it, Jiangqiao Temple is obviously my Dao Sect's Taoist temple. How did it become a Buddhist temple now? Only, where is that so-called Buddhist list? Xiaohua looked at the left side of Jiangqiao Ridge, but didn't see any trace of the Buddhist list. Then, he looked at Jiangqiao Temple again. At this time, Jiangqiao Temple was flourishing with incense. Rays of Buddhist light lingered above the temple. Within the Buddhist light, one after another, Buddha statues faintly appeared. Along with the sound of wooden fish inside the temple, the Buddhist light rushed out. This was precisely the imposing manner of a Buddhist bodhisattva overseeing the temple. At the same time, rays of tranquil Buddhist awareness slowly swept across the surroundings of Jiangqiao Temple. With one look, one could tell that it was the inspection of the Buddhist sect's guardian heavenly king. Xiaohua pressed down on the cloud, and saluted a Confucian cultivator who was slowly flying by. Greetings, fellow immortal, I have something to ask, fellow immortal. There's no need to be so polite. Is there anything I can help you with? That Confucian cultivator was also very polite. I heard that there is a Buddhist list of Mahavairakana in Longevity Town. It's to find people who are seeking sutras and nirvana. May I know where this Buddhist list is? Since it's a Buddhist list, it's naturally inside the temple. The Confucian cultivator smiled and said, Fellow immortal, it's difficult for you to see it. That Jiangqiao Temple only allows Buddhist disciples to enter. We Confucian cultivators are not even allowed to come within 10 feet of it. Oh? The Buddhist sect is actually still so arrogant? Xiaohua asked in a low voice. I heard that on that day, wasn't there a Dongfang family disciple who attacked the Buddhist sect's Manjushri Bodhisattva with a sword and extinguished their arrogance? Alas, that was then and this is now. The Confucian cultivator sighed. Now, the Immortal Palace is colluding with the Great Thunderclap Temple. They don't care about the fate of the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators, and actually do something evil like seeking sutras in nirvana. Even if we 100 schools of Confucian cultivators extinguish the arrogance of the Buddhist sect, what can we do? It's sad that they don't rise, angry that they don't fight. Alas, the pitiful immortal emperor. Xiaohua observed a moment of silence for the immortal emperor in his heart. He waved his hand and bid farewell to the Confucian cultivator. Although the Confucian cultivator's words were somewhat extreme, they clearly represented the thoughts of the majority of Confucian cultivators who didn't know the truth of the matter. Under the influence of the Confucian aristocratic families, these misunderstandings had increasingly deviated from the truth, and were increasingly disadvantageous to the Immortal Palace. Seeing that the clear eyes technique couldn't penetrate the Jiangqiao Temple, Xiaohua didn't dare to use the transfiguration technique near the Jiangqiao Temple again. He hurriedly flew out of the longevity town, found a secluded cave, and quietly transformed into the appearance of a young Buddhist monk, and once again rushed to the Jiangqiao Temple. At the same time that Xiaohua entered the cave, a bamboo raft floated along the Liao River. The bamboo raft was very simple, and even somewhat damaged. Behind the bamboo raft stood an old fisherman holding a long bamboo pole. In front of the bamboo raft was a young monk wearing a clean monk's robe. His hands were clasped together, and he was piously looking at the Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body covered by silk on the riverside. He was chanting, Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. Wasn't this monk Jiang Luer, whose Buddhist name was Chuanzang? As the bamboo raft approached the Jiangqiao Ridge, several Buddhist senses had already swept over it. There were also several clear eyes techniques. It seemed that they had already anticipated Chuanzang's arrival. However, Chuanzang was unaware of all this. Looking at the shore that was getting closer and closer, he turned his head and said very kindly, Boatman, please stop here. I'll have to trouble you along the way. Little monk, have a safe journey. The old fisherman stood up shakily, raised his hand full of cracks, and waved benevolently as a form of farewell. Then, he propped the bamboo pole in his hand against the bluestone on the shore. The bamboo raft left the shore and slowly moved downstream. The bamboo raft drifted straight for several miles. The fisherman who had been standing steadily at the end of the bamboo raft suddenly trembled. His straw raincoat slowly disappeared, and the fisherman straightened up. Small heavenly flowers appeared in the void near him. The fisherman's wrinkled face also changed, revealing a solemn appearance. However, this Buddha's face was deathly pale, and even the muscles on his face were somewhat twisted. It was obvious that he was in extreme pain. Namo Amitabha. The Buddha chanted the name of Buddha, raised his foot, and stepped into the void and disappeared, leaving only the real bamboo raft drifting further and further away in the Liao River. More than 10 miles away, a patch of blood was sprinkled on the protruding rocks above the river. It was very dazzling under the noon sun. The ignorant Chuanzang, who had always been fearless, stood below the Jiangqiao Ridge. He respectfully put his palms together and looked at the golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva on the Jiangqiao Temple. He then tidied up his monk robe and chanted, Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. After walking the deep Prajnaparamita for a long time, he saw that the 5 skandhas were all emptiness, transcending all suffering. Sarira, form is not different from emptiness, emptiness is not different from form is emptiness is form. As Chuanzang chanted the sutra, he kowtowed with each step and walked up the Jiangqiao Ridge with great sincerity. This was a path of pilgrimage and also a path of spiritual sublimation. Chuanzang enjoyed walking on it very much. Every kowtow made his body feel relaxed and made him feel that he was one step closer to his ideal and pursuit. Chuanzang, who was immersed in his own world, did not notice that the mountain path, which was originally filled with people, had gradually become less and less crowded. The equally devout believers began to disappear. On the contrary, the sound of the wooden fish, the chanting of sutras, and the chanting of the Buddhas became louder and louder in his ears. Not only did the Jiangqiao Ridge have a strange phenomenon, but the entire longevity town also suddenly became quiet. The noise disappeared, and the complete hostility turned into peace. Rays of Buddha light inexplicably gushed out. Perhaps there were people walking on the streets, or perhaps there were people buying and selling in the shops, but all these became the background. All the eyes, the focus of the entire hidden immortal continent and the nirvana world, now fell on the Jiangqiao Ridge and on the body of Chuanzang, who was kowtowing step by step. Tens of thousands of people were admiring, tens of thousands of immortals were holding their breaths, and tens of thousands of Buddhas were watching. Everyone was quietly waiting for the beginning of a new era, waiting for the beginning of a miracle, waiting for a good show to start. -13. Chapter 40-59. At this place, the dangers that Chuanzang experienced before would no longer exist. No one dared to face the wrath of the Immortal Palace and the Great Lane Temple in public. No one wanted to disturb this ordinary monk's devout worship of Buddha. Although Chuanzang was already bearing the burden of the war between immortals and Buddhas, his meticulous movements showed the demeanor of a bodhisattva. Finally, a loud chime came from the Jiangchao temple. Chuanzang stepped onto the Jiangchao ridge and arrived before the golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. When he got up again, he looked at the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva that was tightly covered by silk. An indescribable melancholy arose in his heart. He said softly, "Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva, disciple is Chuanzang of the Jinshan Temple. I came here to worship Buddha under the order of my Buddha. I didn't come to the hidden immortal continent. I didn't know that the Buddha's light here can't shine. At the same time, I also know the Buddha Lord's intention. I hereby make a great vow that if the golden body of Bodhisattva is not revealed in the hidden immortal continent, if the Bodhisattva's Taoist field is not revealed in the town of longevity, I will not attain the Buddha fruit in this life." Dong! Another bell rang as thousands of Buddhas chanted, Amitabha, Amitabha. Along with the chanting, a young novice monk came out from the side of the lotus seat of the Guanyin Bodhisattva. He put his palms together and said, "Amitabha. Disciple Chongping greets Uncle Master. Amitabha, martial nephew is too courteous." Chuanzang hurriedly returned the greeting. He looked left and right and said with a smile, "I came from the Golden Mountain Temple in the Elysium. Along the way, I heard that there are many believers in the Jiangchao ridge of the town of longevity. I wonder what happened today?" "All right, Uncle Master understands," Chongping replied. "My Buddha has issued a Buddhist decree, and the senior brothers and senior uncles of the Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss have all come to support my river and tide temple. However, my Buddha is merciful and does not wish to incur the hatred of the Confucian cultivators. Hence, after paying respects to Buddha, they all turn back. However, the Confucian cultivators have been oppressing our Buddhist sect, so our Buddha's light can only shine in the longevity town." "Sigh, what a tragedy!" Chuanzang sighed. "Buddha delivers all living beings from torment and enlightens the myriad of worlds. This is the most important thing in the world. Why can't it be tolerated in the hidden immortal continent? Buddhism is vast and will not help those who are not fated." Chongping smiled and raised his hand. "Martial uncle, you've come from afar to the longevity town. Please follow me to the temple for tea." "Many thanks, martial nephew." Chuanzang nodded and followed Chongping down another mountain path. Chongping, who was in front of him, had no cultivation at all. At this moment, Xiaohua, who had just arrived at the longevity town, suddenly felt a rarely seen aura suddenly descend from the sky, enveloping the entire longevity town. At the same time, from another direction, an extremely dignified aura also appeared, surrounding the longevity town. Everything in front of him suddenly became somewhat unreal, as if he, the mountain, and the people on the road had all turned into shadows. "Not good! Luo is here!" Xiaohua was startled. Sweat dripped down from his forehead. He complained about his carelessness in his heart. Almost without thinking, he released his spiritual force. Unfortunately, his divine sense was like nothingness. No matter how hard he tried, his divine sense could not leave his body. Moreover, his figure began to drift in the air. No matter how hard he tried to circulate his true essence, he was unable to take even half a step forward. Damn it! How could Xiaohua not know that the experts of the Buddhist sect and the Immortal Palace had already sealed off the entire longevity town, eliminating any factors that would disturb Jiang Luer's announcement? Xiaohua's mind raced. He had brought Jiang Luer from the Xiaoyu continent to the Western Paradise. Now that he could wake up from his meditation, Xiao Hua was very happy. If it was under normal circumstances, Xiao Hua would definitely not stop Jiang Luer from doing anything for the Buddhist sect. However, it was unusual now. Jiang Luer had no strength to truss up a chicken. In front of the many forces of the hidden immortal continent, the Western Paradise, and the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, any cultivator from these forces could easily kill Jiang Luer. Although the Immortal Palace and the Lane Temple were protecting Jiang Luer with all their strength, after the two forces came, countless methods would fall on Jiang Luer like a storm. If the two forces were to slack off, Jiang Luer would die. Moreover, the two forces might protect Jiang Luer now, but who knew what would happen in the future? What would happen in the future? Would they still care about Jiang Luer's life and death? Xiao Hua could not take this risk. He could not let Jiang Luer, his only relative in the 3 continents, fall into such a dangerous situation. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and landed on the ground. He retracted his aura like an ordinary person and walked towards the Jiangchao temple. Amitabha. Chuanzang stepped into the Jiangchao temple. There were not many monks in the entire Jiangchao temple. There were also not many good men and women worshipping Buddha. Chuanzang chanted Buddha's name and said somewhat sadly, "Martial nephew, the Longevity Town is the #1 town of the Buddhist sect in the hidden immortal continent. The incense of the Buddha is still too." "Sigh, yes." Chuanzang Ping lamented. "Disciple has also heard from the Western Paradise's martial uncles that the incense of the Western Paradise is at its peak. Disciple really admires it. Unfortunately, if there was no one who prayed for the Sutra of Nirvana, not to mention the incense of the Jiangchao temple, even the golden body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva would be pushed down again." "Praying for the Sutra of Nirvana?" Chuanzang stared blankly and asked puzzledly. "What does that mean?" "Oh? Martial uncle actually doesn't know?" Chuanzang Ping was very surprised. "This matter has already spread throughout the hidden immortal continent. Martial uncle hasn't heard of it?" "Amitabha." Chuanzang was somewhat embarrassed. "I ate and slept in the open all the way. When I rested, I recited Buddhist scriptures. I didn't have the chance to listen to other people's nonsense. So that's how it is." Chuanzang Ping's face was filled with reverence. "Martial uncle, this is the right way to cultivate." "I don't dare." Chuanzang quickly shook his head. "My Buddhist sect has thousands of cultivation methods. Everyone has their own cultivation method. Martial uncle, this way please." Chuanzang Ping led Chuanzang to a Buddhist shrine in the Hall of Great Strength. He used his finger to point at a Buddhist decree emitting a faint Buddhist light and said, "This is the Buddhist decree of praying for the Sutra of Nirvana. However, until now, this Buddhist decree has not been taken down by anyone." "Oh? Is it that difficult?" Chuanzang was somewhat in disbelief. He unconsciously took 2 steps forward and looked at it. "Amitabha." Chuanzang Ping saw Chuanzang's gaze fall on the Buddhist decree and a smile appeared on his face. His whole body slowly retreated and the whole world stopped here. After an unknown period of time, Chuanzang's gaze moved away from the Buddhist decree. He then turned his head and looked at the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva on the Jiangchao ridge. The silk on the golden body fluttered in the wind. Chuanzang's gaze then turned to the west, the far west. Finally, his gaze fell on the Buddhist decree and a firm expression appeared on his face. "Amitabha. Although it's 1,000 miles, although it's 10,000 miles, the Buddha is in this poor monk's heart. 1 step, 10 steps, what else can I ask for in the Western Paradise? Since disciple Chuanzang has already made a great wish for Guanyin Bodhisattva, disciple is willing to take down the Buddhist decree of the Buddha Lord. Then my Buddha's Buddhist light will spread throughout the hidden immortal continent." As he spoke, Chuanzang raised his hand and placed it on the Buddhist decree. Although the Buddhist light was faint, it was also endlessly tenacious. However, this Buddhist light could block the hands of thousands of bodhisattvas but could not stop Chuanzang. Chuanzang's hand touched a corner of the Buddhist decree. "Wait!" At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the originally silent Jiangchao temple. Chuanzang was slightly stunned. He turned his head and saw a faint shadow squeezing out from the crack of the door. Wasn't that Xiao Hua who tried his best to pass through the longevity town, and had no choice but to use all of his magical powers to enter the Jiangqiao temple from the sealed void? Chuanzang was stunned when he saw a monk with a small nose and small eyes. This was because although he had never seen this face before, an inexplicable sense of familiarity arose from the bottom of his heart. He could not help but ask curiously, "Junior brother, do you have any orders?" You. Xiao Hua saw that Chuanzang's hand was already on the Buddhist decree and naturally knew that the matter had reached the final step. He wanted to say a lot of things, but he also knew that no matter how many things there were, someone would not let him say them. He only opened his mouth and said, "Seeking the sutra in the Western paradise is extremely risky. Have you thought it through?" Even though Xiao Hua had only said a few words, the deep concern in his voice struck Chuanzang's heart harder than any hypocritical concern in the world. However, Chuanzang only smiled faintly. He turned his head to look at the Buddhist decree and replied, "Although this poor monk does not have the cultivation of Buddhism, this poor monk is still a disciple of Buddhism. Now that Buddhism needs someone to go through water and tread on fire, why can't this disciple be the person who steps into the sea of fire?" Xiao Hua still wanted to say something, but the difficulty in Chuanzang's words showed that this was his own choice. There was no coercion or temptation. Since this was the case, Xiao Hua did not have too many reasons to stop him. After all, Chuanzang's path was still up to him to walk. Alas! Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. His figure stood there and gradually solidified. Boom! Chuanzang's hand slightly exerted force. A pillar of Buddhist light shot up into the sky. Thousands of heavenly flowers were born from the void shattered by the pillar of light. Following the heavenly flowers, many fairies appeared. After the fairies, many small worlds emerged from the heavenly flowers. Billions of Buddhas were chanting the scriptures of Buddhism in the small worlds. Following this Buddhist light, the imprisonment of the entire longevity town suddenly disappeared. Xiao Hua's feet also firmly stepped on the ground. Amitabha. Amidst the soaring Buddhist light, Manjushri Bodhisattva appeared riding on an azure lion. His compassionate face revealed a well-thought-out plan. The voice of Manjushri Bodhisattva resounded in the longevity town. "Chuanzang, you have taken down the Buddhist decree. This time, the heavy responsibility of seeking the scriptures in paradise falls on your shoulders. This trip has to cross thousands of mountains and rivers. You have to experience difficulties and obstacles. The most important thing is that you have to walk this 1,000,000 miles of road step by step. You can't use any supernatural power beyond ordinary people. Do you have the determination?" Disciple Chuanzang is a Bodhi monk. "I don't have any supernatural power." Chuanzang's voice was originally low, but at this time, under the Buddhist light, it was like thunder. Not only did it resound in the Riverside Temple, it also resounded in the longevity town, and spread to the entire Yuzhou and even the 9 regions of the hidden Immortal continent. Disciple came to Riverside Temple from Jinshan Temple, relying on disciple's feet, step by step. Now I'm just going back to ask my Mahayana Sutra to come to the hidden Immortal continent. Whether it's 10 years or 100 years, disciple is determined to let my Buddhist light spread all over the hidden Immortal continent. Amitabha. The entire longevity town was filled with Buddhist light. It was peaceful and jubilant. -13. Chapter 40-60. Xiao Hua, who was standing at the Riverside Temple, stared blankly at this magnificent scene. He couldn't help but feel bitter in his heart, because everything was planned early on, everything was arranged in advance. Under this grand occasion, who knew how much blood was hidden, how many schemes were hidden? Perhaps this grand occasion was the beginning of the light of Buddha, but who knew if this was the end of the light of Buddha's annihilation? Who knew how many people would fall in this so-called grand occasion, and who would care about the protagonist of this grand occasion? In the light of Buddha, monks filed out of the hall of great strength. At the edge of the Chi of righteousness, Confucian cultivators wearing tall hats and robes came from afar. It was as if the killing intent of immortals and Buddhas that had accumulated for decades disappeared the moment Chuanzang unveiled the Buddhist decree. It was as if the war between immortals and Buddhas was just a joke. When immortals and Buddhas were having an affair, Xiaohua suddenly felt filthy and felt that he was not worthy of such a noble ceremony. He turned his head indifferently, and floated out of the Jiangqiao temple. It was not that no one noticed Xiaohua's departure, but the alert Confucian cultivators thought that Xiaohua was a test arranged by the Buddhist sect, and the Buddhist sect thought that Xiaohua was a chess piece of the Confucian cultivators. When they relaxed, Xiaohua had already disappeared before everyone's eyes. Xiaohua, who walked out of the Jiangqiao temple, had the opportunity to seriously examine the longevity town that wrote his legend. Unfortunately, the longevity town was completely different from Xiaohua's previous memory. The roadside tea shed disappeared, the store where Xiaohua bought grain disappeared, the store where Yuanyao bought buns on credit disappeared, and even the intersection where Xiao Jian set up his divination stall disappeared. Xiaohua looked at it for a while, and was already bored. He turned his head to look at the high Jiangqiao ridge, at the tall golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Although the golden body was blocked by silk, the rich power of faith around it condensed into a mirror-like flowing light. Xiaohua had no doubt that as long as his Buddha relic Bodhi came out at this time, he would immediately be able to attain Bodhisattva's Buddha fruit. However, how could he dare to expose himself at this time? Guanyin Bodhisattva's Buddha fruit was different from other Bodhisattvas, it could not be replicated. If it were not for the immortals and Buddhas crushing each other, how could an ordinary monk obtain so much power of faith? Of course, at this time, Guanyin Bodhisattva attained Buddha fruit and completely subverted the plan of seeking scriptures in paradise. This was directly the fuse of the war between immortals and Buddhas. Even the Mahavairakana revered one didn't dare to bear this responsibility, so how could Xiaohua risk universal condemnation? However, after a short while, Xiaohua once again looked towards the west thoughtfully. He thought to himself in bewilderment, Elysium doesn't seem to be in the west. Why did Luo look to the west before he took down the Buddhist edict? What does that mean? Forget it, go ahead. Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then felt a little disheartened. Luo is already grown up, he should walk his own path. When Xiaohua turned his head, his gaze landed on Liao Jiang. It was from Liao River that he was rescued by Yuanya and brought to the Temple of River and Tide. At that time, his cultivation had not recovered, so he did not have the intention to explore Liao River. Now that he was standing in front of Liao River, he could not help but think of the sea eye of the West Sea and Liao River. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's figure flew up and headed towards the upper reaches of Liao River. Previously, some grains were planted on both sides of Liao River, but now it was flat and clean. The villagers planted Bodhi trees and sunflower lotuses, making it look lush and green. Xiaohua flew up for hundreds of miles. Suddenly, dragon-veined Xiaohua trembled in his body and called out in a low voice, "Fellow Taoists, please stop, oh! What's wrong?" Xiaohua was slightly stunned. His figure stopped in midair, and he released his divine sense in confusion. He asked, "Could it be that the heavenly abode River Dragon clan has appeared in Liao River again?" However, just as Xiaohua finished speaking, he felt a burst of joy in his heart, as if he had thought of something. "That's right!" Dragon-veined Xiaohua's voice was also ecstatic. "I sense the aura of the Yuzhou cauldron. How is that possible?" Xiaohua's voice was also filled with disbelief. "How could the Yuzhou cauldron be in Longevity Town? Nothing is impossible!" Dragon-veined Xiaohua said with a smile. "Fellow Taoists previously fell into the void passage in the West Sea's Eye, and then appeared in Liao River. If there wasn't a passage that led directly to the void here, how could fellow Taoists come here? Since there is a passage to the void here, it is naturally possible for the Yuzhou cauldron to be here. Moreover, at that time, I'm afraid that Kong Han Wu had already taken away the other 5 cauldrons, causing the Yuzhou cauldron to lose its effectiveness. That's why fellow Taoist was able to float out from the suppression of the Yuzhou cauldron. But..." Xiaohua was somewhat hesitant. He turned his head to look in the direction of Longevity Town and said in a low voice, At this time, the Longevity Town's Immortal and Buddhist experts are all here, and the sutra seeking extreme bliss hasn't started yet. How could we dare to make a move here? Fellow Taoist misunderstood. Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a smile. It's impossible for us to make a move now. When the sutra seeking extreme bliss begins, the attention of the hidden immortal continent and the sutra seeking extreme bliss will follow Chuanzang out of Longevity Town. This Longevity Town will naturally be ignored, and it won't be too late for us to make a move then. And that's how it should be. Xiaohua laughed mischievously. Moreover, this time can't be too long. Otherwise, when those Buddhist experts turn their attention back from the sutra seeking extreme bliss and land on the river and tide temple, you and I will no longer have a chance. Fellow Taoist is wise. Dragon Vein Xiaohua flattered. Xiaohua made up his mind, and his figure no longer stayed. Like a meteor, he flew forward for another 1,000 li and rushed into the depths of Liao River. At the bottom of the river, he found a secluded place to hide. After waiting for several tens of days, Xiaohua finally flew out from the bottom of Liao River. When he quietly released a strand of divine sense to explore Longevity Town, it was as he expected. Not only was the incense in the river and tide temple declining, even the entire Longevity Town appeared deserted. It was as he expected. Good. Xiaohua secretly clapped his hands. He knew that it wouldn't be long before this Longevity Town would become a boiling cauldron of voices. Now was the best time to collect the Yuzhou cauldron. Dragon Vein Xiaohua had the experience of collecting the Shuzhou cauldron, so finding the Yuzhou cauldron was not troublesome. He dived into the depths of Liao River and found the Yuzhou cauldron's aura in just a moment. Oh? Fellow Taoist. Dragon Vein Xiaohua was a bit surprised. The aura of this Yuzhou cauldron is slightly different from the other 8 cauldrons. Xiaohua naturally didn't find any trace of the Yuzhou cauldron, nor did he know the difference in its aura. He asked curiously, "What's the difference?" The aura of this Yuzhou cauldron has a kind of indomitable feeling, as if the lifeline of the entire world is pressing on this Yuzhou cauldron. And Yuzhou has always been called the central region. It is the center of the 9 regions, and the Yuzhou cauldron has such an aura. This means that the Yuzhou cauldron is the center of the 9 cauldron great array. It is very likely that it is the earliest cauldron to be set up. Xiaohua understood and explained. If we have used the 9 regions cauldron before, when we set up the array again, we will also set up this cauldron first. With that, Xiaohua followed Dragon Vein Xiaohua's guidance and entered the ground. After searching for half a cup of tea, Dragon Vein Xiaohua smiled and said, "I have already seen the Yuzhou cauldron. Fellow Taoist, congratulations on gathering the 9 cauldrons." "Haha, thank you for your trouble, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua laughed. "From now on, fellow Taoist can cultivate in peace." Roar. Dragon Vein Xiaohua let out a low roar and flew out from Xiaohua's body. Dragon patterns flashed all over his body and multicolored clouds overflowed. He opened his mouth and a mouthful of dragon breath fell into an inexplicable space. Wang wang. A burst of chime sounds came from the ground not far away, and then the entire earth shook violently. Quick! Soon there will be Buddhist experts coming. Xiaohua saw that the Yuzhou cauldron had such a big movement, and hurriedly urged Dragon Vein Xiaohua. Roar! Dragon Vein Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. With a hiss, he stretched out his 5 claws and grabbed the Yuzhou cauldron. The dragon chi around his body surged, and a powerful earth chi was emitted. With a boom, he grabbed the Yuzhou cauldron. Then, Xiaohua patted his forehead, and 8 cauldrons gushed out from the 5-colored true chi. A strong aura fell on the Yuzhou cauldron. The Yuzhou cauldron let out a cheerful roar and rushed into the 5-colored true chi. The cauldron became smaller and smaller, and was about to fall into the true chi. Ha ha! All of a sudden, a loud laughter rang out from not too far away from the Yuzhou cauldron. Xiaohua was within 100 miles of the cauldron, and an overwhelming aura immediately surged out along with the laughter, completely sealing the space. Even the Yuzhou cauldron, which had fallen into the true energy, stopped in midair. Who? Xiaohua was shocked, and his divine sense swept towards the source of the voice like a hammer. Boom! A huge roar came from the distance, and Xiaohua's divine sense was actually easily shattered by the person who came. The impact of this impact overturned the entire earth. Xiaohua! It's really you! A tall Confucian cultivator wearing a green-gray Confucian robe appeared in front of Xiaohua. You were the one who did the thing on Yaotai Mountain. Kong Han Wu was also killed by you. Master calculated everything, but he didn't expect that you, a Taoist cultivator in the late stage of nascent soul, would have so many helpers. You really have too many hidden methods. If not for this old man's interest, how could I have discovered your face after lying in ambush in Longevity Town for more than 10 years? Middle 7th level essence energy, Great Master! Sensing his unparalleled confinement power, sensing the bone-piercing clear light in the eyes of the person who came, Xiaohua's heart trembled violently. How could he not know the other party's origin? A Confucian cultivator's Great Master was between the 6th and 7th level essence energy. This Confucian cultivator's Great Master was clearly at the middle 7th level essence energy, and his strength was almost comparable to a low-level sage of literature. Xiaohua really didn't expect that the Immortal Palace would send a Great Master who was second only to the sage of literature. Roar! Dragon Vein Xiaohua roared, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws as he pounced towards the Confucian cultivator. That Confucian cultivator coldly smiled, and with a wave of his big sleeve, countless inscribed law chains came from the void, and pounced towards Dragon Vein Xiaohua like an even more rampant python. Clang! Just as Dragon Vein Xiaohua was about to be bound by the chains, a dazzling swordlight chopped down. This swordlight was so sharp, and the 5 qi contained within the swordlight was even more so like boiling water, breaking apart this Confucian cultivator's confinement in one blow. Not only that, Xiaohua was shocked. He rubbed his hands together, and a thick crystal light frantically poured into the space between his 5 fingers. Within 100 li of Xiaohua, thunder erupted, and each lightning bolt was stronger than a horned dragon as it pounced towards the Great Master. -13. Chapter 40-61. Facing Xiaohua's lightning, the Confucian cultivator turned a deaf ear to it. With a wave of his sleeve, countless inscription chains appeared and blocked the lightning. Facing Xiaohua's sword qi, the Confucian cultivator was unable to remain calm. 5 qi's unification? You actually know the 5 qi's unification! Xiaohua's 5 qi's unification was naturally not an ordinary 5 qi's unification. As soon as the Confucian cultivator saw it, he found it strange. His eyes lit up. Could it be, this 9 cauldron is really useful? It was also at the same time that the swordlight split open the shackles. Dragon Vein Xiaohua suddenly turned around and entered Xiaohua's body. At the same time, that true qi that was like a waterfall swept up the 9 cauldrons and entered Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua practically didn't stop at all. Taking advantage of the fact that the spatial shackles were split open by the shocking sword strike, he urged his magic power and activated the Earth Escape technique, turning into a stream of light and disappearing without a trace. Want to leave? How can it be so easy? The Confucian cultivator sneered. He raised his hand and a 3-colored true qi flew out. In an instant, the ground within several hundred miles was frozen. A bone-piercing cold air rushed out from the 3-colored true qi. I'll. The Confucian cultivator stretched out his hand. His arm turned into a shadow and expanded along with his true qi. However, just as he stretched out his hand, a look of surprise appeared on his face. What kind of Earth Escape technique is this? As he spoke, an awe-inspiring aura gushed out from the void around the scholar. His figure suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in Liao River, 100 miles away. Unfortunately, just a moment before the scholarly cultivator's figure appeared, Xiaohua's figure also created a ray of light in the Liao River and rushed out of the Liao River. This Xiaohua is really remarkable. The Confucian cultivator's face was a little surprised, but he still looked like he had a card up his sleeve. He thought to himself. Looking at his strength, I'm afraid he has already reached the upper 6th grade. It's only been a few decades, but his cultivation has advanced so much? Could it be that he was already at the 6th grade when he participated in the Jade Pavilion meeting? Grandest ancestor, oh grandest ancestor, you've really set up a grand scheme! Xiaohua rushed out of Liao River in a panic. He simply didn't have time to identify the direction. True essence surged all over his body, and lightning appeared under his feet. Immediately, huge waves were set off on Liao River, and Xiaohua's figure turned into a thunderbolt as he rushed out in a certain direction. In just a few breaths of time, a blurry and indistinct human figure similarly flew out from Liao River, and like a strand of multicolored light, it followed behind Xiaohua. At the same time, in the direction of the Longevity Town, in the Jiangqiao Temple, dozens of Buddhist consciousnesses were like a gust of wind that swept across the sky and chased after them. Similarly, outside the Jiangqiao Temple, there were also several Buddhist consciousnesses that streaked across the sky and chased after them. Those celestial and Buddhist experts who had not left Longevity Town were puzzled. The sutra seeking of nirvana had already begun. Why were there still people stirring up trouble here? Xiaohua's figure flew in midair. Lightning flashed out from his dantian from time to time. Along with this lightning, Xiaohua's lightning escape speed continuously increased, and the Confucian cultivator chasing after him started to slow down after using teleportation a few times. But this Confucian cultivator's Buddhist consciousnesses were truly formidable. No matter how Xiaohua escaped, he would always feel a pair of eyes closely staring at him from behind. Seeing the surrounding scenery begin to distort, Xiaohua knew that his lightning element 3 realms had already reached its limit. Then he heard the sound of thunder from the lightning element 3 realms, which was like true heavenly thunder resounding through the sky. This sound of thunder frightened some cultivators that occasionally passed by, causing them to hastily dodge. Seeing this, Xiaohua suddenly felt a trace of unease in his heart. See, not good! This Xiao was careless! That Confucian cultivator is a 7th level essence energy great master. Since he laid an ambush near the Yu province cauldron, how could this Xiao escape so easily? He must be afraid that fighting with this Xiao near Longevity Town would attract the attention of the Longevity Town's Buddhist sect, so he deliberately let this Xiao escape. And even if this Xiao escaped from Liao River, I should have taken advantage of the current and directly flew to the Jiangqiao Temple. Even if I can't get the protection of the Jiangqiao Temple's Buddhist sect's senior monks, I can only make that Confucian cultivator hesitate to attack me. Xiaohua understood at this time, but it was too late. That Confucian cultivator's strength was much higher than his. He had already sealed the area behind him, so how could he be allowed to turn around again? Xiaohua's current plan was to run as far as he could and see if he could shake off the Confucian cultivator in the end. Wang. When Xiaohua's lightning escape reached the 3rd day, seeing that the distorted space had already reached the point of tearing, suddenly Xiaohua's body began to give birth to a powerful tearing force. This tearing force was like thousands of small hands grabbing Xiaohua's body at the same time, wanting to tear his body apart. At the same time, the sound of thunder resounding through the sky began to sharpen, and the surrounding lightning began to flicker crazily. This guy, what kind of trick does he have? The Confucian cultivator chasing behind Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed. At first, he wanted to chase Xiaohua to a place where no one else would go because he was afraid of the Jiangqiao Temple's Buddhist sect. But in the end, Xiaohua's true essence was abundant. Although he didn't use the Tao sect's instant shift to escape, his flying speed was far beyond that of ordinary cultivators. As a 7th level essence energy martial grandmaster, he actually couldn't catch up, and even showed signs of chasing further and further away. Now, seeing the crazy lightning around Xiaohua's body, he felt that something was wrong. Seeing that the lightning around Xiaohua's body was different, how could he dare to be negligent? He patted his own head. Wang. With a clear sound, 3-colored true essence fell into the sky, triggering the noble qi within 1,000 miles. The entire sky suddenly began to freeze, and thumb-sized ice fragments appeared in the air. Within this ice, everything began to quiet down, and the sound of thunder also began to subside. Seeing that his lightning escape was on the verge of advancing, but was stopped by this Confucian cultivator, Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and coldly said, "Domain power? Good, let's see how this Xiao will break your domain." As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together, and thumb-sized runes fell into the void. A strange fluctuation spread out from Xiaohua's body. Wherever the fluctuation went, most of the ice fragments were shattered. Although the Confucian cultivator urged his true qi to repair the domain, the large expanse of ice seemed to have seen the sun and melted one after another. "Dao Sex Xiaohua, you're really powerful!" The Confucian cultivator exclaimed in admiration, and opened his mouth. Boom! A light blue glow gushed out, and a simple halberd engraved with inscriptions fell into the void. Heavy noble qi pillars fused into the halberd without the Confucian cultivator's urging. The corner of Xiaohua's mouth slightly twitched, and he hurriedly urged his body to dodge to the side. But at this time, the domain that was previously shattered by the lightning suddenly became much harder, and with a ka sound, it blocked Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua didn't have time to urge the lightning, and a fierce wind was born from the void, piercing towards Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his fist, and with a boom, it landed in the air, and the powerful impact produced an ear-piercing roar. In the void, a long halberd phantom condensed from thousands of noble qi was shattered by Xiaohua's punch. Not good! Xiaohua shattered the illusion, but he didn't show the slightest bit of complacency. Instead, he revealed a dignified expression. Sure enough, along with the chaotic noble qi, tiny vortexes were formed. Ka! The original body of the simple and unadorned halberd strangely revealed a malevolent expression in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua hastily dodged the halberd, but the seemingly pointless halberd pierced into his shoulder. The halberd fell, and a bone-piercing chill appeared. Inscriptions that looked like tiny ice fragments swarmed into Xiaohua's body, and a sharp qi that could pierce through mountains madly pounced on him. One wang! Xiaohua's Taoist golden light was defeated by this sharp qi, but at the same time the golden light dissipated, a bronze brilliance suddenly appeared, and within this bronze brilliance, there was even a wisp of silvery white. This brilliance was so solid that the thousands of inscriptions on the armor seemed to have crashed into a wall and shattered. In particular, although the simple halberd had pierced Xiaohua's body several times, the cracks were quickly mended within the brilliance, and in a few breaths of time, they were completely healed. The Confucian martial grandmaster was flabbergasted. He looked on in disbelief and whispered, "Demon? Demon body? Hee hee." Xiaohua laughed nastily. He suddenly raised his arm, and his elbow slammed down on the halberd below him. Kacha! Layers of cracks appeared on the surface of the simple halberd, and the entire halberd trembled rapidly, emitting a mournful cry. Damn it! How is this possible? How can he reach such a realm with just his body? Even if it's a demon body, it's still not enough. The expression of the scholar cultivator changed slightly. He was very clear about the power of his imperial implement. Seeing that Xiaohua was able to defeat his imperial implement with just his physical body, then how could Xiaohua's physical body be just the demon body that he had measured? It was even more powerful than the magic treasures of Taoist cultivators, right? The Confucian martial grandmaster recovered from his shock and hurriedly withdrew the halberd. His body once again emitted a faint buzzing sound, and the domain around Xiaohua condensed again. No, this won't do. Xiaohua frowned as he pondered. He urged the lightning to protect the area around him. Within a dozen li lightning flashed in this area, and all the ice that invaded the area was destroyed by the lightning. Although this Confucian martial grandmaster's domain is low level, it's still not something that I can resist. I might be able to protect myself from being controlled by him, but in the end, I can't escape. In the end, I'll still be trapped to death by him. While Xiaohua was pondering, the Confucian martial grandmaster moved again. His body suddenly expanded, and a pillar of vast qi gushed out from the nearby space like a volcanic eruption. Moreover, the three-colored true energy that he urged before also formed three different colored sub-bodies around Xiaohua. Each sub-body showed a fierce power, and firmly covered the sky within 1,000 li. Seeing the power of ice in the entire space rise again, the Confucian martial grandmaster slightly narrowed his eyes. He gently waved his left hand, and a light blue cold light disappeared into the air along with his true energy. At the same time, the three sub-bodies roared in unison. A pillar of vast chi once again condensed in the void and fell into the sub-bodies. For a moment, the vast power raged. 13. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.